Welcome to this Wednesday, June 21, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Sequoia Union High School District. The meeting is hereby called to order. Our first item of business is closed session, and we will at this time hear any comments from the public about any of the closed session items. Do we have any members of the public wishing to comment about our closed session items? I see no attendees on Zoom with their hand raised, and
We have no comment card.
no comment cards here in the live audience. So we will recess to closed session. Okay, welcome to this Wednesday, June 21st, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Sequoia Union High School District. The meeting was called to order at 5 p.m. Then we recessed to closed session. I'm now going to report out from closed session that the board took one action to approve the right words here. Oh, before we report out. Okay. My mistake. We'll report out on closed session afterwards, after we do the roll call. Thank you.
Trustee Nori,
Here.
trustee Koo,
Here.
trustee Dubois, Vice President Stevenson,
Here.
President Ginn.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the agenda for tonight, and I know in advance that we would like to remove item 12.13 from the agenda. Does anyone have any other comments about any items on the agenda? I'd like a motion to approve the agenda with the amendment of item 12.13 being removed.
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Now's the report out on the closed session. By a vote of 5 board members in favor and 0 against, the Board of Trustees approved the settlement agreement for case number 2022-2023-20. Okay, next we have our special recognitions.
Yes, so I would first like to start. They are not here tonight. There are many, many of them. And that is our plant managers, our grounds, and our custodial teams at each of our sites that help with the setup and the breakdown of all of the graduations. They work nonstop that week leading up. And we are so very thankful for all of them and the commitment that they have for their sites, especially that week leading up to graduation. And so I often get pictures of each of the sites after graduation is set up from the plant managers. And, you know, they always seem to complete the setup at sundown the night before. So it's just kind of this, it's just kind of very fitting and telling. So I definitely wanted to acknowledge all of our site teams for their setup for graduation. And then I also have the wonderful privilege to introduce our new student trustees. I'd like to take this time to introduce the new student trustees for the 23-24 school year. They were the top candidates out of 21 who applied for this position. So there was some competition. So congratulations to you both for rising to the top. So Zahara, is it, how do you say your last name? Agarwal is a senior at Menlo Atherton High School. Zahara is a second year parliamentarian for the Shared Decision-Making Site Council, working with staff and administration, advocating for student needs or overall school well-being. She also served on their associated student body as a junior class advisor, representing the MA's advisory board meetings. She has also served on the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. So I'm very excited to have her be co-leading that council for this upcoming year. She also serves with the County Youth Commission. Zahara was highly recommended for her bright, creative, hardworking nature. She is a natural organizer and effective problem solver who thrives on opportunities to contribute whatever her role or her capacity calls her to do. Her AP US history teacher, Ann Olson, said that Zahara has an innate ability to make connections with her peers due to her willingness to listen with compassion, allowing her to make each leadership opportunity authentic and meaningful. And I'd say I was able to see that from your interview. So I'm very excited to work with you this upcoming year. So thank you. Our second trustee is Jacob Yurev. Jacob, did I say that correctly?
Almost Yuryev.
Yurev. Okay. I promise I'll get it right by this time next year. Okay. Throughout his years at Carlmont School, he has participated in athletics, led clubs, founded clubs like the SAT, ACT Tutoring Club, and provided academic opportunities for the community. Outside of school, he has volunteered in the VITA program that helped low-income residents of San Mateo County file taxes. He further uses and develops his leadership skills in the Junior Achievement Company program, where he operates as the president and CEO to directly manage 20+ peers while collaborating to develop a useful real-world product. He is also the Chief Growth Officer of the financial literacy nonprofit Youth for Finance and President of Youth for Finance Financial Consulting. I will disclose that I asked him if he had any interest in applying for the CBO position. He cannot quite yet. We will talk again in a year. Social Studies Department Chair Jason Waller said that Jacob has tremendous potential and a strong sense of determination to achieve the goals he sets for himself, and is approachable, personable, and always ready with a quick smile and compliment. And I could say I also noticed that from his interview. But I also received last night, little after 9 o'clock, a little notification, Jacob, from one of your teachers, Mr. Rowe, who said that you had been selected or you won the Junior Achievement for Entrepreneurship based on a project that you are spearheading. So I thought that that would be a great opportunity. I have a little cute little picture of you at a podium. I'll make sure I pass that around. So we do welcome both of you. We are very excited to serve with you this upcoming school year. I'm very excited for the opportunity to grow our student advisory council and just really get those student voices to the table. So thank you both. Feel free to make a couple comments if you like, and I'm sure our trustees would also like to say a few things to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that very kind introduction, Superintendent Leach. I am so excited to be here. I know that student trustee is a position that I have wanted to hold for a very long time, and I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to represent MA and all of the SUHSD schools. And I hope that we can accomplish a lot of great things this year that particularly focus on the student voice and, really maintaining that relationship between administration, the board, and students.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Superintendent Leach. This is super exciting, and I absolutely cannot wait. I'm totally bummed that I could not be there with everyone today. I'm in Sacramento State for the whole week, but I cannot wait to be in person for the rest of my term, and just super excited to be representing the student voice, and cannot wait to work with the superintendent and the Board of Trustees.
Thank you so much, President Chen. First of all, I'm so excited. We got some new folks on board. I'd like to call you happy to have you, to be a colleague. I remember when I was at the graduation for our last two trustees, I was like, man, they were colleagues. They weren't just students. They were challenging me. So, and I look forward to the same with both of you all. And I was in interviewing as well. And I know my voice is the least important in the room when we have students. And so I looked at the two trustees and they decided who should be the next colleagues on the trustees to really think about all of our students. What are you doing, Carrie? She's timing me. Okay. I'm just excited. And I remember the question that people asked in the interview, which is, how are you going to represent all voices? And both of you had really wonderful aspirations around that. And I'd love to join you in finding people to bring those diverse voices, expectations, and experiences across our district to ensure that we're getting all the voices that we need. I've been praising our student trustees wherever I go, and students don't know that they exist, number one. I think, I know when I was running for election, people didn't know what Sequoia Union High School District, so now they do. And I hope that when you're in your role, that one of the legacies that you leave is that they know what a student trustee is. Thank you.
Just want to say welcome. I think this is the first time student trustees have appeared at the very first meetings. So you guys are extra impressive. You're starting right away. And I think we're going to do something this year because in the past, we really haven't had any training or any welcome, I believe. Okay, I can't turn my head. So I think we're going to do something this year just to maybe talk a little bit about what it's, really like to be a trustee. Because I think once we get in this position, it's very different than what we actually expect it to be. But anyway, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you and learning from you both.
Hi. I also want to congratulate you both and welcome to the Board of Trustees. Look forward to working with you. And like Trustee Dubois said, we're hoping to have a warmer introduction and orientation to what being a student trustee is all about. And also the cool thing is that this year's annual education conference that's sponsored by the California School Boards Association is in San Francisco. And they actually have a student trustee track. I don't think our trustees have attended in the past, but since it's in San Francisco, it's pretty easy to try it out and see if there's value in having our trustees go to that. Because then you would be able to meet student trustees from around the state. So welcome.
Great. I also want, go ahead, topic.
Oh yeah, so I wish I could be there in person too to welcome the new student trustees, but having also been on the interview panel and reading about both of them, I'm super excited to work with them, and I'm very confident you guys are going to do some great things to really help represent the student voice in our district. So I look forward to the upcoming year.
I want to also say welcome, and Jacob had a chance to talk to Zahara briefly before the meeting, but to tell you as well, you guys have full right to comment as much as any other trustee. So please feel free to raise your Zoom hand. I told Zahara to raise her hand here, and you're here to raise your hand live when board members are making comments, and you have full comments just like all other board members. And also we did a resolution for our prior student trustees, and we're going to look into whether we need to refresh that resolution for you guys or not, but so that you can make motions on certain agenda items, almost all of them. And there's a section in our board policies, which in the 9,000 section of the board policies, if you look on the district website under governing board about us policies, and there's a section about student trustees that you could see what our bylaws say about the role. And excited to have you and to have you contribute. The student voice is very important. And so a lot of responsibility, and we're happy to have you.
I have a question. How do we announce who the student trustees are to the student body? Do we do a PR post? How do we let people know?
It will
Not
definitely,
people, but the
it
students.
will definitely be in social media and then communications when we return in August.
Okay. Can I ask another question?
Mhm.
Can their picture go on the website, please?
We'll look at
Okay.
putting their picture on the website. And then we'll also do a deeper orientation in August where I'll spend a couple hours with them going through. They'll get a binder just like you guys got a binder, which hopefully will be helpful.
That conclude recognitions. Okay, the next item is public comment. This is for a chance for the public to comment about items not on our agenda. People in the public will have a chance to comment about each agenda item at the time of that item. So if anyone wishes to make a public comment for items not on the agenda, please raise your Zoom hand now or submit a comment card. Do we have comment cards?
I have one comment card.
Okay, any Zoom attendees? Okay, let's hear our one public comment.
All right, first, oh, yeah, this is from Abby Corman.
Okay. Abby, I know you're familiar with the public comment rules, but just in case others are not familiar, public comment, each person gets up to 3 minutes to make their comment. There will be a countdown timer for someone in the live audience or on the Zoom screen. If someone's commenting by Zoom, and you have 3 minutes for the comment.
Good evening. Happy end of the school year. Since the start of the school year, I have been requesting to hear mental health and social emotional learning presentations, as well as attendance presentations. As we've heard from our community in surveys and board meetings that these are two of our district's biggest issues of concern. I'm surprised with so much on the agenda tonight that there was not room for a presentation that has been slated for this month since last August. My lens these past few years attending board meetings has been as an English intensive and intervention teacher. Students in my class have been in the country for at least 5 years, if not their whole life, going to school in this country, and they all do not yet read above a 5th grade reading level. You'd have no idea in conversation with them. The majority of my students, over 70%, are LTELs, special education students, and have a high ACEs score. And they're full of brilliance that does not get recognized very often at school. Based on an internal district reading review, 1 in 2 students in classes like mine are graduating. I've never met a student who doesn't want to graduate, but I have and know many who have given up for a variety of reasons. The ones that break my heart are the ones that gave up because they did not have access to supports they needed that I thought we were required to provide for them or that we were naming we were providing for them. As we end the 2023 school year, 1 year after, in quotes, the pandemic, our mental health clinicians still have wait lists, and more students than ever are considered truant. As a teacher on the front lines with students every day, I have to trust the systemic work is being done to remedy that behind the scenes. But again, 1 year after the pandemic, students are still not caught up on mental health or special education assessments, and we still have very little clarity on the absence protocol. Even if our processes are still a work in progress because there's a lot to do for them, I understand. I believe we need to know where we're at and what struggles we're facing because it should influence our budget and LCAP. Since we've not had an attendance presentation all year, I dug into my class numbers. 100% of my intervention students missed 20% or more of school. 3 of them missed more than 50% of school, but only 1 of them had a district meeting. 71% of my sophomore intensive students, 71% missed 20% or more of school, with 3 more missing more than 50% of school, and 2 of them had a district SARB meeting. 71% of my students failed PE. We have a lot of students failing 3 or more classes. I hope this next year the board focuses on intervention services we provide to tier 2 and tier 3 students academically, behaviorally, and emotionally, so that we can work together toward raising our graduation rates.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Board of Trustees correspondence, which is a chance for the president and superintendent to share any correspondence that went just to the 2 of us. And I'll share that there was none. Nothing to share at this meeting. The next item is Board of Trustees, Superintendent's comments and committee reports. Anyone who'd like to go? Go ahead, Carrie.
Just a couple of things. So since our last meeting, I attended EPAA's graduation with Superintendent Leach. It was absolutely inspirational and held at Stanford's auditorium. And they also attended Redwood's graduation. The other thing that I did since our last meeting, Redwood City 2020 had their retreat. They do this once a year. It's an opportunity to sort of set the vision and meet everybody associated with that collaborative. There are a lot of new partners, including Upward Scholars, and very engaged representative from the county of San Mateo. So it was a very good meeting. We did an icebreaker around cultural inclusivity, and it was a great icebreaker that I highly recommend if any of you guys do icebreakers of that sort. It was think of your own cultural heritage and an item that would be representative of how you feel, and often that's a food item. It really got people talking and really got us to know each other. See, and the other thing, Raphael announced to the group that there is going to be a new partnership with Redwood High School. So I think I mentioned to all of you that we did have a brainstorming session with Principal Ogden and Superintendent Leach, and everybody in the room is very excited about that. So it's an opportunity for a new partnership, an opportunity for funding, collaboration, and with all the powerful partners in the room, I think that could really help Redwood. And I think it's going to be around the area of attendance. Because as we know, a lot of the kids at that school aren't hooked up with the many services that are offered in the community. So it's going to be a great opportunity for our students, I think. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Trustee Carey. I'm excited about the attendance because I know there's been a lot of work in our community also to carve the biking and so many other, and really Redwood really leading the effort to apologize to our kids of not having enough for them to do, which takes a lot of humility for adults to say, I was wrong. So I think it will be helpful for our students because everybody has a leader in their community. And so I'm glad they're looking at that. Okay, so I'm on the Equity Diversity Committee for our district with our staff, whether they're classified or credentialed. And the 3 things that they wanted me to report out is that the EDC is going to be doing an accountability report, like doing a presentation to the board about what they've been doing, kind of areas of growth and areas of celebration. And so they'll be coming in probably in the next coming months around that. They also encouraged us to add an EDC site coordinator and ask our principals at our site leadership to really do presentations as part of their site presentations that include some of the site-based EDC programs. So for some of since we have new trustees, we have an EDC that really looks at thinking about how we can reflect in our staffing and our programs the diversity of our community. If you look at our demographics and the learning profiles of some of our students, that we reflect some of the needs and the diverse needs of our students and our staff and leadership. And then, so we have a larger EDC, and that each site has, because every community is uniquely different. And so they have groups of people who work there as well within the internal workings there. So that is what they wanted to share. They almost wanted to make comments about the celebrations, that they appreciated those who were able to come out and want more to come out. They've gotten emails. I know I've gotten emails from some folks that, because I was everywhere, from folks saying that they appreciated the board being present at some of the celebrations, which were pretty new this year. And I know we just got a PowerPoint where they show some of the pictures across the district. So just wanted to celebrate that. I know that I went to a few and they were the highlight for some of the students. And then, excuse me, I think the other thing that I wanted to talk about that's related to EDC, they didn't ask me to say this, but I actually had 2 staff members share with me separately that they really acknowledge Pablo and Taja's support. And I know when I went to the Pacific Islander run, the staff got kind of teary-eyed with the support of them and having their first celebration. And I know, I still know some students. So some students called me and asked me what that was and encouraged them to attend, because they just didn't know what to expect as to having the first one. And then another teacher expressed real celebration for them of feeling isolated on campus. And then when we started the affinity groups, they realized they weren't alone. And dealing with, some really significant situations on our campuses that have since resolved and all that, but said, I realized I wasn't alone, being the only one. And so just wanted to share that. I also want to share some of the housing needs that I'm starting to hear from some of our teachers, that it's costly. I know at my own school, we have a teacher who is, do Airbnbs right now on a monthly, because it's cheaper to rent someplace for a month than to pay a full rent in a place that you have a lease for. So I want us to continue to think about housing. I know we have to reconnect Superintendent Leach with SOFIC for our subcommittee, but I think it's something we really do need to think about, especially as I look at the beautiful people who retired, and they are beautiful. We love them, and they also have the right to retire, but we also have to have people who come behind them to take their places. And so I want us to continue to think about housing and whether or not how we will do it, whether it's advocacy, whether it's more, I've never heard of say we're going to build housing, but how do we influence the process so that our staff and teachers are included in someone's plan? And then, yeah, I might cry. 49ers Academy has closed in East Palo Alto. It was an unexpected closure. It is one of our strongest partners coming out of East Palo Alto. When I came to the district, when my kids, now 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago, when I was in 8th grade, new to this area. I didn't grow up in this area, so I didn't know anything about Sequoia Union High School District, except for it was a beautiful campus, and guess I'll go there. And my kids were part of the 49er Academy after I came out of a private school to go back to a public school to get more support. And really didn't think I needed 49ers Academy because I know how to make a call. I know how to navigate. I know how to show up, whether you ask me or not. And I had some issues transitioning into Sequoia Union High School District, and they were the ones who bridged the gap for me. And so I'm very, very sad that they closed unexpectedly. I have already talked to Superintendent Leach. So as a private citizen, I will be writing an email that they gave us no notice as to that they were closing. And that's at least, I don't even know how many kids that is, because it has grown, their high school program. They are the only program that is on the campus of MA that is actually on the campus of Ravenswood School School District. So there is a huge gap that they provide, that I think they're the glue to some of all the other programs. And so I'm awfully disappointed that they are closing without notice on our campus. They help kids get connected to clubs when they feel alone. They're trying new things. You have kids coming from all different, at least 3 to 4 different districts. And so you're also reconnecting, which is the odd years for freshmen when you're trying to figure it out. And I'm going to finish talking because you guys are taping me or timing me, but I'm just really upset about it. So there. And then the last thing I want to do is, as we prep for our fall and our community coming back, I really want to encourage us to really think about our language and how inclusive it can be. I know we have different community members emailing us regarding a variety of things. And I want us, and I encourage us, and maybe we can have a dialogue one day by myself or with a group, really using language that does not emphasize who we are as one community. And I want to be very cautious of that. I know it happens in my community, especially when funders come in and things of that sort, they try to separate us out. And really, I want us to still be able to talk about the issue, but then be okay with not doing the rhetoric around it that is hurtful to communities, wherever you live, wherever you study, whatever language you speak, whatever student profile and learning profile you are, that we are supportive of people sharing their issues, not supportive of ostracizing our community, because we are one community. And I'm looking at our board, including our student trustees. We are so reflective of who we are in our community, which is the beauty of district elections. The hard thing about district elections is that we don't remember that someone else over here lives in a different district that has a different niche in community and value, but it doesn't make them less or more, it just makes them different. And so I'm putting that out there because that's what's been on my heart because of some of the emails I've been receiving. And so I know I probably talked 5 minutes, but I felt like I needed to say that as a moment of the last meeting of the year. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have comment? Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to send my congratulations to all the graduates as well as retirees. It was great to celebrate right before the board meeting, and also my own 5th grader. Yay. And I really want to thank the staff for the hard work throughout the year, and to please enjoy the summer. And I know some folks are also going to be pursuing professional development over the summer. And for those of you who are, I'm going to be joining you in that pursuit. I'm taking a college advising course through the UC Berkeley Extension right now. And the module on understanding Gen Z and the teenage brain is actually very interesting and applicable. Like Gen Z, they consider their parents to be co-pilots in the college application process. And just because of the events in the world that have happened as they were growing up, they just tend to be much more fearful. And kind of combined with the teenage brain being biologically more susceptible to addiction and anxiety, you can see how that correlates with all the mental health issues that they're facing. And it's just been interesting. And one of the assignments was also to interview a high school student. So I actually interviewed 2. One was a neighbor's kid who's going to Carmont, and the other one was a kid of my high school classmate who's in a completely different county. And just kind of comparing the 2 experiences, it was actually very different. So my aha was, wow, what high school you go to actually matters because the size of the school was different. The types of classes that were offered to freshmen, because they were both rising sophomores, was different. And one of the things that caught my eye was the level of information that freshmen were being given regarding the college application process was really different. So the one in the other county, they actually had a required freshman class that introduces freshmen to personal finance, an overview of the college application process, where the college counselor pushes into that class and just describes her role and how everything works. And then the students had to research possible careers that they were interested in. And as part of that research, determine what the salary was, come up with the living expenses, and kind of put a budget together to determine whether they could survive based on that salary. And so it's almost like a simulation of real life. And I said, wow, that is so cool. And the student from Carlmont was going, I wish I had that class. So it's been a very interesting class so far. And I'll share with the rest of the board the links to the YouTube videos and the reading list if you want to do something over the summer. But I think it's very important that we understand what teenagers are going through in order to be effective as board members. I'm also registered for the Avid Ignite one-day program for district leaders, along with Trustee Dubois. I'm really looking forward to attending that and better understanding Avid and how the frameworks might be used more broadly outside of the elective class. So the day, I thought it was August, was it 6th or sometime that week? It's a Thursday, I think. Yep, that's it. Have a good summer.
Topic.
Oh, yeah. So I'd quickly share, I had a chance to attend the MA graduation, and I'd like to really thank the MA administration and especially Principal Luskut for putting on such a great ceremony. And, you know, it was amazing to see and come back only a couple years after I graduated myself. And yeah, I'm also looking forward to this summer. I'm actually going to take a course at the Graduate School of Education in Stanford regarding education policy. So, you know, I think the summer is a time to rest and recharge. We've definitely had, you know, a very busy year, and I look forward to working more in the fall for our district.
Lieutenant Leach. So a number of people comment on things I was going to talk about, but just to re-echo, the Redwood City Together focus with the Redwood School is something that I think I encourage all the trustees to learn a little bit more about. I attended the Woodside graduation, similar to what others have said about the graduations they attended. I think it's a nice practice we have of rotating to going to different schools in different years. That was great. And congratulations, as others said, to all of our graduates and all of our retirees. Okay, the next student trustees want to say any further comments you could at this time. Okay, next is the comments from the Sequoia District's Teachers Association.
Hello. I'd like to thank everyone who was here earlier for the retiree recognition. It was very nice. It was certainly more uplifting than my comments 2 weeks ago. And after a week of vacation with bickering 12-year-olds, I am very happy to be here this evening with you all. Unfortunately, though I was on vacation for a week, I was still very much present in my role as president, as there were a few things, unfortunate things that our members were dealing with that I had to help them navigate. And in speaking with one of them this afternoon on my way down here, I realized it was a first-year teacher who had gone through something very difficult and who was able to step back and say, you know, the situation may not have gotten solved the way I wanted it to, but I feel good that by raising the issue, it will go better for someone the next time. And so I want to bring that hope forward as we look to next year, that so many of the problems that become positional battles for us are very real human issues for the people who are involved. And many of them could be avoided if we had better internal communication, if we knew what was going on from one side to the other. And it was interesting earlier today, Superintendent Leach said we're a large district, but we're still sort of a mom and pop organization. And I think we really need to work on mom and pop talking to everybody that they've got coming in to help out with the store, so that everyone in our family is getting the full impact of that. And we don't have to, I mean, this particular member didn't actually come to the union with her problem, but said something out of frustration to a classified colleague who reported it to another certificated member, who reported it to a rep, who brought it to me, who brought it to the attention of district office staff. And we shouldn't have to play that sort of game to get someone the services and the help that they need. So I'm hopeful we can all work on our communication moving forward. And remember that anytime that we can shorten that loop, we can make that circle into more of a direct line, we are getting services to kids more quickly and more efficiently, and we can do more that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Edith. Next would be comments from the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Okay. Okay, so the next item is approval of our consent agenda. Board action to approve the following items is taken simultaneously with one motion, which is not debatable and requires a unanimous roll call vote for passage. The action indicated on each item is deemed to have been considered in full and action taken as worded therein. Only members of the board and the superintendent may remove items from the consent agenda. Members of the public may provide comments at the start of the consent agenda item, which may convince a board member, the superintendent, to remove an item for further discussion. The motion on the consent agenda will be to waive the reading of the consent agenda, accept the reports, adopt the resolutions, and approve other items. I know, I guess I'll ask, does any board member wish to pull any item from the consent agenda, or do we have, I guess we'll start with public comment. Do we have public comment about any items on the consent agenda?
I do have 2 comment cards in person and 1 hand up on Zoom.
Okay, let's hear the comments, please. Thank you.
First up is Abby Corman.
Good evening. I am asking for item 12.16, the MOU with Atherton Police Department, to be pulled from the consent agenda, as it is a complete shock to me and many community members and goes directly against the request made by the MABSU for our administration to be transparent, and directly goes against your board's promise to earn back trust from the community. Whether or not I believe a police officer should be on campus 100% of the time, that's not what I'm arguing tonight. I'm arguing this is not the process we should take if we are to have one. This was not listed in MA's site plan approved less than a month ago. As an MA staff member, I can name it was not discussed at any staff meetings. The students were not brought into this conversation. Without talking to stakeholders, inserting a full-time police officer from the Atherton Police Department on our campus imposes harm. As has been shared with you last night or 2 nights ago, I wrote an open letter to Atherton PD asking about their training when on school campus, because I'm afraid for Atherton Police in particular to be called for any issues related to our schools, because it appears our students, and Black boys in particular, will be treated with violence and aggression first, and facts will be found out later. I fear my students may one day be hashtags. The open letter is available for the community to sign at tinyurl.com/open letter to APD. We currently have 30 signatures and it was posted about a day ago. In this MOU, item 12.16, while we outline clearly that we will not hold each other legally liable, there's nothing about required training. I'm concerned because I believe non-lethal force, which is what's written and outlined on the policy for Atherton PD, is not enough on our school campuses. Not killing our students is the bare minimum. I have questions for Atherton Police, such as when are students followed and arrested, and when is the police report filed? When called by any school in your jurisdiction, does your response vary when a student is armed versus unarmed? When do you involve school staff? What training does the SRO have specifically to serve students, and do any other staff members receive this training? We need transparency on procedure when they show up in our space, and I believe we don't have it. And we're doubling down on building this relationship without properly reflecting. The Atherton PD does not represent Menlo Atherton school demographic. And if we were to have any PD on campus, I'd hope it'd be the EPA PD who's not fired a shot at anyone from 30 years or more. I had hoped the 428 event, the protest, 2 days of student walkouts, and the large showing at the board meeting would convince
Thank you. Next, we have Edith Salvatore.
I was actually going to draw attention to items 12.10, 12.12, and 12.14, which are all special education contracts. Again, in the hope of better communication, it would be helpful if the board background specified when these contracts are for what school year they cover. After doing some digging, it became apparent that 12.10 is an amendment to the contract that is expiring at the end of this month for the last school year for behavior analyst services, and that 12.12 is a new contract for those same services moving forward. For both of those, there is a posting for a board certified behavioral analyst on EdJoin, and it's unclear if this contract in 12.12 is intended to fill that position until applicants are found and a suitable applicant is hired, or if they are to be in addition to those services, or if it's the former, if we can back out of or terminate early the contract. There is some language about mutual agreement to terminating the contract, but it doesn't say that if the position is filled, it'll be terminated. Similar in 12.14, it's physical, occupational, and family therapy services. And while physical and family therapy services are not part of SDTA's bargaining unit, occupational therapy is. And so we have a concern that the board needs to know when it is contracting out for services that are part of our employee organization and collective bargaining agreement. And so we hope that that can be better clarified in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to repeat the, I don't know if the attendee with the hand raised was here for the public protocol earlier, so I'll just share that you have 3 minutes for the public comment, and you'll see a countdown timer on the screen.
All right, our next speaker is Arden Margulis.
Hi, my name is Arden Margulis, and I am a reporter. I'm a student reporter at the MA Chronicle, and I've written about item 12.9, the contract with paper tutoring. When I researched that article, I found out that only 9% of students attempted to use the service at MA I guess now 2 school years ago. It also showed that that school year, the cost amounted to $370 per student active district-wide. I mean, that's very expensive. Then with the data presented in the new agenda item, though it appears more promising, it claims that 55 hours have been spent on the service. But given the cost, that's $90 per hour that the service was used. And in my opinion, that's just not justified with the level of service that paper tutoring is providing. When I spoke with students and tutors, they both claimed that tutors are dealing with multiple students at once. That is not what Paper's website says, but some tutors have claimed to have up to 7 students at a time. I doubt that Paper tutoring is able to provide quality tutoring if they are dealing with 7 students at a time. Furthermore, when I researched the article, I found that district officials were under the impression tutors were fingerprinted, and that tutors do not say that they have been fingerprinted, and they say that they have not been fingerprinted. I think these discrepancies are important to discuss. And then I'd also want to call to your attention some of the claims about Paper's conduct towards their employees. We had one of the interviewed tutors who asked to remain anonymous say that they monitor Slack to an Orwellian degree, and that they have fired tutors for advocating for policies to better support students and engaged in union busting techniques. The other important thing to consider is that this exact service, 24/7 chat-based tutoring, is already available to all students and all devices in the state of California through a partnership with Help Now and the state of California. So the state of California is already paying for 24/7 chat-based tutoring and essay review, which is exactly why we're hiring Paper. So this service is already available and it's not being used enough, but maybe the district, instead of spending $250,000, could advance this other service that's basically identical. Final notes are that other districts have required Paper to agree to certain usage data, and if they don't follow that, the district receives a reimbursement, and I think we should consider doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe that concludes our public comment. No other comment cards in person. Okay. Do any board members or does the superintendent wish to pull any items from the consent agenda for individual discussion?
I have a clarification. So when the audience or public comments say they want to pull things, do we then vote on it to pull those? How does that
So
work?
our practice is that any board member or the superintendent can pull an item. Technically, it would require 3 board members to agree, but our practice has been that if anybody wants to discuss an item, we have done so.
Okay.
So I'll ask again, does any member of the board or the superintendent wish to pull any item from the consent agenda? Sophic, do you want to pull any items from the consent agenda?
Or our students?
Yeah, I think I'll pull which one? Wait 1 second. The item 12.9.
Mm-hmm.
Paper education, Sophic?
Yeah.
And I think for myself, I want to do, just to have a little bit more discussion, 12.16, just to hear a little bit more.
Okay, any others? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with 12.9 and 12.16 being pulled for separate action?
I move that we approve the consent agenda with item 12.9 and 12.16 pulled for further discussion.
And I'll second.
Roll call. Trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ko,
Yes.
trustee Dubois, Vice President Stevenson,
Yes.
President Ginn.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. So our practice is to immediately act on items that have been pulled from the consent agenda, and we'll start with item 12.9. Sophic, you pulled this item. Would you like to say something about it?
Yeah, so I have mixed feelings about this item. I do think this is a good concept that they have, and I do think it's helpful. I did read an article in Chalkbeat that kind of did raise some concerns that other districts have had, but I think it's worth continuing and just being careful to make sure that it's a service that's actually being used. You know, I've actually got one of my friends to let me try to play around with the platform, and while it does have its uses, I don't know how useful it is in actually replacing replacing what in-person tutoring someone might get from, you know, a private tutor or even through the district. But, you know, I do respect the staff recommendation, and if people think it's useful, you know, I'm happy to support it. But I just think it's worth being careful or you know, checking in constantly to see if we're getting our money's worth, because I think there are other districts that have decided they're not from this program.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments about approval of the contract with Paper Education?
Yeah, I concur with trustee Nori that we should make sure to continue to monitor the utilization of the service and whether, and perhaps, I don't know if we've done in the past, ask our students for feedback of what's working or what could be improved about the paper tutoring service, so that we provide that feedback back to the vendor, right? So that they could improve next time around. It looked like there's some new features for this coming school year. So then I'm really curious, the adoption of those new features, especially as I was taking that class and understanding some of the needs for college planning. It looks like the new platform includes some aspect of college planning support, and I don't know how that's going to work. But that is kind of interesting. And to compare that with services that are available elsewhere, because I do know that the libraries also have virtual tutoring services. So I don't know if we've looked at that and kind of helping to advertise that to our students as well.
Oh, one quick thing I'd like to add. I don't know how negotiating these contracts work, but I do think there probably is a legitimate concern that there is a significant amount of students not using or taking advantage of it. So I wondered if in the future we can negotiate a contract that's not based on paying for students ahead of time, but paying on like more of a per use basis. But once again, if the staff recommends it, I'm inclined to support it.
Thank you for all the comments. I just wanted to make a few of my own since the agenda item is under my side of the house. We had a lengthy discussion about paper as a tutoring platform with principals and principals councils after the Menlo Atherton articles came out, and kudos to the reporter who did a great job. What principals experienced across the district varied from site to site. Menlo Atherton was one of the schools with the lower amount of usage. The data that you heard tonight is from a year ago. Use of the platform has gone up significantly. We're a student body of 9,000. 3,000 of our students used paper at least once, and there were 9,500 sessions, which means an average of 3 per student. Although it is true that there's a high number of students who use the platform once and then never use it again. We are not suggesting that we think we have found the best tutoring program in the history of the universe. But we do think that when we did a lengthy comparison with it compared to other services, that it was the best in the bunch. I have some concerns, as do legal counsel, about the platform being offered by the state of California. One of the concerns is that while the audios are recorded, they are live audio sessions between a student and an adult. And a student can request to continue having live audio sessions with the same teacher if they find them to be very helpful. And while that at face value looks like a plus, as we've researched some of where these services fall short in student safety, one of those is the ongoing relationship with a rather anonymous adult in an online setting. So again, principals all were in agreement that we need to keep watching this, and that we are not saying We have arrived and we want to stay with this platform ongoing. We had one principal, Redwood students have not used the platform very much. And so she, I think rightfully said, I'm not going to weigh in on this because it's not really being used by my students. Every other principal in the district said, please keep it for at least another year.
Okay, any other comments from board members about this item?
I wonder though, excuse me, Ms. Hanson, I'm not for sure if you looked at the library as part of, I heard trustee Koo talk about the library tutoring program, the online program.
We can spend as much time on this as you would like for
No,
staff
I
to
don't want
spend
to.
on it.
No.
So no, we did not look at the library online tutoring programs, and they're going to be different from library to library. I don't mean to be flip when I say that. We looked at school districts around us and the highest recommended tutoring platforms when we chose paper. There's been a lot more that's come online since then, no pun intended. And that would certainly include the library tutoring. So we can spend some time looking at that and see if that is a good option.
No, I wasn't requesting it. I was just asking.
But if anyone hears that someone's got a really amazing platform, we'll absolutely investigate.
Also, when given the date and wanting to put something in place for next year, I strongly support moving forward with this at this time. I think it's always good to review all of our contracts and if they're the best thing for the future years. But I think for the current year, I support the existing recommendation. I also recognize that tutoring services are hard to get, even for those who can pay. It's hard to find tutors that are available. And I like that we're able to provide a resource to all of our students that they can use. And so I support this. Do I have a motion to approve item 12.9?
I move to approve 12.9.
A second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Nori.
I'll abstain.
Oops. That's a no, correct?
Oh, can you abstain from these items?
You keep your microphone.
We do have abstentions in SDMSC, but I don't know if you all follow the same code of rules.
I believe our bylaws say you only abstain if there's a conflict. Otherwise, you should vote yes or no. But I don't know that it's illegal for you to abstain. It may be in violation of our bylaws. So that said, can you confirm what your vote is on that item?
Can you? Oh, yeah, I'll abstain.
Trustee Koo,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
Vice President Stevenson,
Yes.
President Ginn.
Yes.
Motion passes 4 yeas and 1 abstain.
Okay, the next item is 12.16. Trustee Stevenson, you pulled that item?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this to our attention, Abby. I did look at all of the agenda items. This one didn't stand out for me from the perspective that you were coming from. So I actually agree with this, but it's just because I think there is, always just a level of safety concerns with our students who are young folks, but they also are as big as adults. I always want to keep that in mind of safety, not just for them, but also for our staff and community members. But the question is about Menlo Atherton Police. And Dr. Chacon isn't here. I'm looking at Bonnie, or I'm looking at Superintendent Leach. I know that our SROs are pretty well trained on being on our campuses. When we're thinking about the incident afterward, that's what's off campus. So I'm just trying to wonder how can you speak to the training piece of it?
So to provide a little bit of context in this conversation with the approval of this agreement with Atherton PD does not stop that conversation with the expectations and the ask from the BSU on clearly defining what the SRO is to do and is to not do. The ask for a designated SRO came out of the town hall that was held back in December after there were 2 incidents of guns found on campus. So I was actually at that town hall, and it was filled with staff and community that was very welcoming for the SRO to be on campus. Now, the SRO that is currently on campus is often off campus at training, which leaves us with not having an SRO on campus all the time. So this contract secures that we would have an SRO on campus for 5 days of the week. I think it is 100% reasonable for the district, along with the MA community, to be very vocal about what we need out of an SRO partnership with Atherton PD. And it is my understanding and my discussions with Chief McCauley that that is how we will be proceeding.
Okay. The last thing, I know because it's interesting, MA lies in so many different police jurisdictions. I just want to put that out there. There's like 3. So it makes it a little bit more complicated. But I know I've been going to what the meeting's called the Trust, which is Menlo Park School District facilitates this meeting where community partners it's very loosely structured and people come in and they talk. And we've actually had all 3 police units show up and they've talked about how they work together. So the city of East Palo Alto's police department does not have actual jurisdiction because Menlo Park School District or Menlo Atherton School District is in Atherton. Correct?
Yes, Menlo Atherton High School is in
Yeah.
Atherton.
Yes,
Correct.
so it's in Atherton. So East Palo Alto can't go into Atherton unless Atherton Police calls them in there as a collaborative partner. So it has to be the Atherton.
For the service of the SRO.
Yes, for
Yes.
the SRO
Mhm.
because of where we're located. But what I've learned through the trust, but also my own conversation with now Chief Jeff Liu, is that they work really closely.
Chief Jeff Liu of East Palo.
East Palo Alto, he's now the
Mhm.
chief and no
Mhm.
longer the interim for 4 years. And so he works very closely and I know that they're always working on how to respond and sharing what I would say cultural consultants to different situations. And so that's why I feel so comfortable with this, which is I'm saying this publicly, but I'm also looking at Abby as to why I support this, because I know that there's a lot of work around collaboration. And my hope is that I know that we have police officers that do reflect the diversity of the community, in addition to Menlo Atherton and Atherton Police, that they're constantly sharing those perspectives with each other. But I hear the concern, and I think as community and at the site council meetings and things of that sort, you can talk directly to those police officers about how to work.
And
So
when
thank you.
we had that town hall back in December, we were able to get all 3 jurisdictions together. And you saw that collaboration. And I think for the overall success and safety of the site, that needs to continue and actually grow in partnership with any SRO that we have on MA's high school.
Okay. So just want to thank you for bringing up that topic, and still want to make sure our student trustees also hear that the BSU there still have concerns around police because of their experience. But I think they're all willing to work together. And I know that most police departments have cadet programs and things of that sort where they bring young people on because it is seen as a recruitment tool as well. So I just want to take this moment just to say publicly, thank you for bringing this up. Thank you, Superintendent Leach, for answering some of my questions so that we can have a discussion. So I bring forth that item 1216 is approved.
As a motion to approve.
I think I didn't say it quite like that, but yes, that's what I.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Before I call for a vote, does anyone else have any comment they'd like to make about this item? Okay, roll call.
Yeah, I just,
Go ahead.
I mean, I just like to say, I echo a lot of what Trustee Stevenson said. I do think it's good to have an SRO at MA. When I was a student trustee, we looked at it, we had a presentation and the SRO came and talked to the board and I thought it was very valuable, you know, the work they're doing. And I think there are some legitimate safety concerns that necessitate it. One interesting thing I'd like to add is over the years, I've had a chance to talk to a lot of campus aides, mainly at MA. And, you know, they are a group who actually is on the front lines of dealing with these issues. And the overwhelming majority of them I talk to strongly feel like they want to have a police officer at Menlo Atherton High School. So, you know, deferring to them who truly are on the front lines of dealing with a lot of student issues, I do think I'd support approving this contract.
Yeah, thanks, Hopper, for bringing that up. I remember that presentation. I think that might have been when you were a student trustee and sounded to me like a very positive program as well. So roll call vote, please.
Trustee Nori,
Yeah.
trustee Koo,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
vice president Stevenson,
Yes.
president Ginn,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay, the next item is 13.1, a public hearing for excess reserves. Crystal, would you or Christine like to say anything, or should I just open it up? Okay. So I guess it is 7:16 PM and I will open the public hearing for excess reserves. Do we have any comments from the public or the Zoom audience relating to the district's excess reserves?
We have none.
Okay, then this public hearing is hereby closed. Okay, the next item is item 14.1, discussion of facilities master plan.
Yes, so this is a very exciting opportunity for us to share what a fairly large and growing team has been working on now for a little over a year. I'm just going to stall as we get set up. So we do have a lengthy presentation for the board tonight about how our facilities master plan came to fruition, the amount of outreach that was conducted, and some exciting opportunities of what potential projects could look like moving forward. It is important to know, as official as the, facilities master plan may sound, it's like a booklet of some realized ideas and potential needs that we have. Often there are things that occur during a lifespan of a bond that can bump a project, can alter what was designated in the timeline for the facilities master plan. So please, when you are hearing this presentation and looking at some of the things that are presented, that again, these are ideas from conversations with stakeholders addressing current needs and then needs as we look towards the future. So we do have our team from CAW Architects with us. So I will turn it over to Brent.
Thank you very much. This is on. Hello. Yep. Okay, good. Board President Ginn, esteemed board members, and Superintendent Leach. I am Brent McClure, principal with CAW Architects. To echo Superintendent Leach's comments, it's been a wonderful process that we've been, and a journey that we've been on with your district for the last 13 months. And we're excited to present to you sort of the culmination as to where we are as of today. I'm going to let my team continue to set up some boards that will kind of feather into the beginning or the middle part of the presentation. What I want to cover today really is kind of talk about the schedule and the process, kind of give everybody a basis of understanding as to where we started, where we've gone, talk about the stakeholder engagement process, who and how we talk to people, how we received input, the assessments that we did for the campuses, and then drilling down into sort of what we learned. And then the sort of the meat and potatoes of this will be looking at the specific campus plans of each of the school sites and talking about budgeting and then sort of what's emerging for the beginnings of a bond program. So just so that everybody's has sort of the same level of understanding, what is master planning? Master planning really, it's not design, but it's zooming out a little bit farther and going through a process where we understand the needs of the school sites as it relates to facilities and how facilities dovetails directly in with educational planning. We look at kind of there's sort of the 4 pillars, as we like to call them. It's looking at sort of funding and financial issues and funding availability, educational standards and outcomes and sort of the programmatic goals of the school sites, the facility needs, and those are looking at like how aged and worn are buildings and how are they not serving the campus. And then looking at the capacities of the campuses and looking at what are the and how those are going to kind of fit over time. All of those sort of feed into some guiding principles and center around a vision, which then spits out at the end of the process really planning diagrams. So we're starting to look at what projects could look like and become. Looking at the estimating and then ultimately sort of prioritization of these projects, because the wants and the needs always usually are going to outstrip the funding that's available. So we have to look at what can we realistically accomplish in a program. As far as the schedule goes, this is we've updated the schedule. We met with you last summer, kind of showed you our process, and this has kind of updated some things. There's really kind of 2 main chunks, or sort of like 3 stages in the master plan. The first is really the community engagement. And these are where we have these listening sessions. And what I want to stress to you all is we went through a really lengthy and engaging process, no pun intended, where we kind of started small and then grew out from there. So that began with kickoff meetings with the district and the district staff. Then we had sessions with the principals at a one-on-one level. And then from there grew into site stakeholder outreach meetings. And the stakeholder groups really were the kind of the sort of the engine and the driver behind. We don't have our easel team here. This is going to be really, they're doing fine. I'm going to keep talking. The site stakeholder meetings were crucial because that was a cross-section of each individual school site's community. That included the principal, site staff, faculty, students, and parents. And so it was really wonderful to get all of those voices in the room together to talk about and understand what their needs were. We then shifted in over the course of the summer, we shifted into looking at the campuses. And then we kind of hit a pause button as we got ready for the bond program and then revisited it and came back. And then that was the stage where we really started to distill what we heard from the listening sessions and then started to go through with concept planning. And that's when we returned to the school sites to vet, review, reiterate, and confirm the outcomes that we're going to show you here today. As I mentioned, really, there's sort of the 2-stage process with this outreach. The first one is really listening. And then the second was really this on the back end, which was planning. And again, it's sort of this tiered approach, district one-on-ones, school site committees. And then eventually we did have at most of the school sites, what we called kind of a faculty-wide forum where we invited the faculty and students and parents, which was a larger grouping outside of the site committees. We actually worked with close to 250 people that we touched with over the course of this process. And, this says engagement workshops. We had a total of 33 meetings. So this included meetings as well as workshops at all these different levels. Again, student participation was phenomenal. And in fact, are there any principals here? Faculty, that students actually had some of the best ideas at each school site. It was really, really great. After the engagement process, we shifted into site assessments. And so this was us taking our team over the course of the summer to go and actually walk the campuses, understand the age, the wear, the tear, visually surveying the buildings, documenting these conditions. We interviewed site maintenance staff to kind of understand even further what some of the needs are at that level. And then these kind of begin to formulate deferred maintenance plans, and that which helped us then validate the scope needs against the M&O needs. Now, I'm not going to get into what these are some excerpts from the reports that were produced, but what this looks at over time, over on the left, it lists all of the buildings, and then it lists in columns like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and 10 year. And the white is percentages of depreciation of the buildings. Yellow means that things are going to slowly start to age out a bit. So what this says is you're perfectly timed at this stage to be doing some renovations, and that your campuses, though, of the existing buildings are in, existing classrooms are in, some degree of fair shape. Now, what we've learned from this process, I want to kind of talk about each campus one at a time. Carlmont High School, working with the principal and the staff and everybody there, T-Wing was by far and above the most important emphasis and focus, as well as expanding confidential counseling and student support services. There was talk about a little bit about library. Students identified, better outdoor space, and then better spaces, study spaces sort of outside the classroom. And this was a common theme that we saw at a lot of the school sites, which is we're working in the classrooms. We need places where we can engage with our colleagues to work on projects, work on papers, study for certain things, and kind of have almost like a collegiate atmosphere and a collegiate type of an environment. There was a consistent set of themes kind of with M&O, and we've looked at some of the specific ones that are here that relate to Carlmont. And Menlo Atherton, an emphasis on classrooms. They've got a lot of classrooms that are kind of date back to the 50s and the 60s. And even though we've got a lot of new buildings on the campus, there's identifying that, hey, we need to start to think about some of the general ed spaces on these campuses. And then expanding and centralizing student support services. So in a similar vein as confidential counseling that we talked about at Carlmont. They had some specific needs, the bleachers, the press box at their field, also talking about an expansion of the weight room. And then the students were identifying, again, some common themes such as flexible study space, the notion even of a student union as this idea of bringing social space together, outdoor space and academic space kind of in one concept, so that, the campus starts to reinvigorate and strengthen the heart and the hub and the center of the school. And kind of help to reinforce the school's identity. Sequoia High School is a unique challenge, and has some unique needs to it. By far and above, identification here at this school site was sort of this improved identity, entrance, and wayfinding. How you come into the building, how you, every time I go to this campus, and even though I must have been to Sequoia at least 10 times for the process, you walk in the front door and you're kind of like, wait a minute, who do I check in with? And sort of how do we solve those problems? Looking at new classrooms again, can we supplement the classroom spaces that exist here? And then, better access and use of the front grove. Right now, students are permitted to go out into that, that front of the campus. And, Sequoia has this weird dichotomy of, we have this huge building, which which houses nearly like 80% of the school. And that's where they spend the bulk of their time. But at the same time, you've got this beautiful outdoor space. And how do we leverage that and kind of take advantage of that more? They were resounding with wanting better connections to the outdoors. And then at Woodside, replacing older classrooms, again, similar themes, expansion of the weight room and dance studio, replacement of classrooms, and again, flexible study space, better outdoor shaded spaces, and they as well identified as a student union. So we took these themes and distilled them down together, kind of working with the district, and things started to coalesce around kind of 4 groupings of we're going to call them planning goals at this point. First in educational programs. I'm not going to read through all of these, but it's kind of replacement of the and improving the aging and undersized classrooms. This is really focusing in on general ed and sort of the older cores of the campuses that have yet to be touched from prior bond programs, and really looking at, can we either do it through new classrooms or reinvigorating what is already there? Student support space, this is a broad spectrum. And on one end, think of it as like, hey, we're going to have a couple of extra conference rooms, which was one of the asks of, an ask at many of the school sites. Hey, we just need more space. All the way up to student union on the, and the kind of think of it as everything in between. And where do we fall on that spectrum of designing and creating planning objectives that fit within that? But it's thinking about supporting students outside the classroom in every sense of the word. Site PE athletics kind of all falls into one bucket, and really it ends up being a list of what's specific to those campuses. And then infrastructure, it's not only restrooms and the pipes and everything else, but it's helping to complete the HVAC projects that are already underway and rounding them out, including Sequoia, and then also looking at sustainability, such as solar panels and other ways to save energy and help with the environment. We wanted to just kind of bring some of the inspirational pictures to get people's juices flowing that we did bring to some of the other school sites, thinking sort of outside of regular classroom spaces, outdoor shaded spaces. This is one of your campuses. Different types of classrooms that have, better linkages to the outdoors and much higher flexibility. And then also sort of flexible, spaces with access to resources in different new and invigorating and inviting ways. And again, more social indoor and/or outdoor spaces. This title says budget planning. Please disregard that. I put this slide together because I wanted to share a concept as we look at the 4 buckets, and what we worked through was this push and pull between classrooms and student support space. And with the end goal being that we're going to arrive at a point where the most prioritized projects need to fit within the bond budget and the overall program, is that if you prioritize student unions on one end, you're going to have classrooms might be less on one, on the other end. Conversely, if we stress classrooms, what happens to the student support space? And so that was a theme that we worked through with each of the school sites and the district in concert to kind of find the right landing space. And so as we look at those project planning goals, where we ended up was focusing on new classroom buildings and being strategic with our work, as opposed to spreading out money for classrooms across and just doing simple modernizations. Focusing on student support that enhances student support services. And so that's a combination of confidential counseling and other targeted needs for each site that would be specific to each site, but at the same time, having some flexible spaces and meeting rooms that could be used for students, for faculty, and for administrative staff. The PE work and site work is kind of unique to each site. And then infrastructure is really kind of the list of items that emerged from our site walks and meetings with M&O and whatnot. Now, the last couple of concepts I want to touch on before diving in is that if you think about your campuses, it can be seen as daunting to think about where do you begin with master planning these large, new, bold ideas within your campus settings. And so we developed kind of a framework to think long-term and looking at the campus plan for each site. So for example, wherever we were going to target a project, we made sure that we plan to maximize that site. Nothing is worse than building on a site, and then you come back 5 years later and you go, geez, I ran out of classrooms. Why did we put a single-story building there? Right? Number 2, focusing on making sure that we're putting buildings that have the greatest impact within that campus. So it's focusing on campus cores. Are there ways to create and leverage opportunities outside the building and the project, such as student support space, large plaza spaces, and can we kind of reinvigorate a heart to each of these schools and kind of create more than just what we're trying to accomplish with just classrooms, student support space. And it's sort of reinforcing that campus fabric with how do the places connect, and then just kind of the broader goal of enhancing the community. Now, this is just framework. We're going to talk money at the end, but I wanted to just illustrate that we planned out project budgeting to include soft on the left. Each project number that you will see here shortly is the project cost. So it includes all of the costs associated with doing that project in today's dollars. And then the blue areas on the right represent how those projects would then subtotal in a bond program. We're going to come back to this a little bit later. But just to stress that we've accounted for temporary housing across the entire bond program. We've accounted for escalation at a comfortable, and I'm going to say possibly slightly conservative rate. It's difficult to plan within this economy right now, but we're targeting 8.5% of escalation for next year and 7.5% the following year, and then 5.5% throughout years out to the end of about an 8-year cycle. And we've consulted with I have consulted with 3 different independent estimators as well as construction managers to sort of validate these numbers, because we're working really hard to be as focused and accurate as we possibly can at a master planning level. And then allowances for program expenses, because you're going to have those, as well as program contingencies to then make up the overall bond program. All right. So I'm going to now go through each of the campuses. So at Carlmont, this is the existing campus, and we've sort of highlighted just to kind of give you frame of reference, looking at classrooms that are really small, which is the really light color, looking at the 700 square foot is sort of the pivot level. And then the dark yellow kind of shows you all of the work that you've kind of done over the last 20 or so years with your last, few bond measures to kind of see how the campuses have grown over time. Carlmont, there's not enough pictures that you can put up here to really tell the unique story of the campus with the hills and the back road and all the other spaces. But I think when we get to discussion, we can pull these up so you can look at all these together, because I know this is a lot of information to digest at one time. But to go through the plan at Carlmont, can I use is there a cursor on the screen that you can see? Excellent. Awesome. All right. So the number 1 project was N1, the new T-wing, which is down over here. And it looks like these 3 buildings, and we're going to do a blow up of that in a little bit. There's a building over here that we fondly nicknamed the Terrace building, which we'll show you also in a little bit. And then a redo of admin entries like student support and services all in over here. The renovation projects are the gyms, minor renovations to both gyms, and then R3 is the library renovation. And then for the site projects was looking at bleacher expansions, and that's a combination of a new press box and eliminating the student store, and it really kind of give them enough space. Entry over here that simultaneously adds entrance to the stadium, as well as a much better entrance up into the campus. New baseball field over here in the back. And then some of the lower hanging fruit was sort of the viewing stands at the tennis courts. And then the U projects you see over here are not on the map, but they're kind of listing all of the things that are specific: resurfacing the roofs, renovating restrooms, replacing windows, miscellaneous improvements, and whatnot. So to zoom in on the T-wing, which was their top goal, I'm gonna as you probably are well aware, it's a really steep part of the whole campus is steep, but this is a steep part of the campus. And we really tried to design a building that leverages some of the concepts of the S-wing and the outdoor plaza space. And so we tried to conceptualize a building that we sort of drew the outdoor space first and then wrapped the building around that. And I hope this makes some sense to you in a little bit. So at the lowest level, and this weird line kind of represents the hillside, if you will, is that we create this lower plaza and extend it out, because the T-wing kind of comes right through here right now. So we're actually making the building skinnier with a few classrooms at this lower level. We're proposing to expand plaza space across the road and kind of clean this up with some traffic controls that we talk with the principal about keeping cars out of here, especially during peak times, so that students can kind of create a much bigger gathering area. And then as you then come up the next level, this plaza space now doubles in width. We've got classrooms along here. All of this shaded area is outdoor space. So you can kind of walk around and circulate at each level and move from classroom to classroom. And it's a 3-story building that tiers and cascades up the hillside. And so then this is the 3rd story. So in some ways it masses and is proportional to the S-wing. Then shifting gears, and what we love about this is really this commanding outdoor space. It's going to be a whole new central hub, kind of expanding on the hub that's already there right now. And then jumping over to N2 is the Terrace building. want to talk about that for a minute. You know, here's the photographs of this. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of all of this and just sort of pull this plaza out and across. And then right now you've got this covered walkway that is where the MUR is. And then you've got the sunken pit where the basketball court is that used to be the pool. And there's this wonderful opportunity to simply remove this canopy, drop a building down into the pit, like so, for dedicated student support services here with stairwell and elevator access. And this can be further developed through the design process, kind of conceptualizes how that space might lay out. And then on the roof, create a terrace with a new trellis that then doubles the size of their lunch area and the way that they access the MUR with their food service lines. Completely transform that space. And then as I showed before, it would link it up into the, here's a section of what that could possibly look like in planning level. N3, this is that entrance building. Again, kind of cutting a proper 2-story building into the hillside. You'd come in at grade, enter into administration. There could be social emotional counseling, health. The existing football room could be tucked in the corner with a separate entrance. And then as you come upstairs, academic additional counseling services, and then a more informal student center that could flow out onto a patio space over into here. Infrastructure projects, we touched on those already. So what we did was we went through an extensive prioritization process, both at the earlier stages to kind of understand where some of their goals were. And then when we met with the sites over the last, few months here, zeroed in on where their top projects were that would fit into the overall budget. And we'll get to some district-wide totals a little bit later, but this shows you the project totals as they relate to the campus in each project. So the T-wing and the terrace building would be considered phase 1 and fit within the bond program. And then an expansion of the bleachers, press box, and areas in through here as well. And then the miscellaneous improvements that would then do minor renovations to the existing classroom wings. There's a lot of push and pull between field space and baseball field. But those dollar amounts are roughly, they're very similar. From a classroom count, this project will add, replaces 15, adds 19 new ones, and then has a net increase of 4 classrooms. Okay, Menlo Atherton. Again, existing campus. And the master plan again takes a similar effect, which is really targeting new work at the campus core and preserving future sites for other work. And so we took out the D and E wing south and are arranging a new classroom wing building here, which I'll show you in a second, in and around the main quad. So that way you have services that all can kind of ring around and fit within the center of the school. Renovation to B wing south. Right now that's got the Zen Den and other similar type programs. We want to reinvigorate and open that up for better student use. Renovations to science, stadium and press box and new bleachers, weight room and minor renovation of existing weight room, turfing the baseball field, and then the list goes down as you can see over here on the right. We can come back to this if we need to. So zeroing in on this, we're looking at demolishing 11 classrooms and the 6 portables that are currently out by the pool and constructing 20 new classrooms, as well as about 4,000 square feet of student support space. So at the ground floor level, we'd have dedicated student support space that can open and spill out into this quad area with the classroom that kind of flows in and out. Classrooms along the back, with the G wing being as tall as it is, we're looking at then stacking classrooms here at the 2nd story and then actually pushing to a 3rd story, which will then be comparable in height to the existing G wing. So that way we're fitting and maximizing the site and available space, as well as giving a high degree of flexibility and openness to the campus. So really this whole south edge of the building is going to be this diffuse edge that opens up into the center quad. Jumping ahead to the B wing south, we're looking at renovating this into additional dedicated student support space. So the concept that I want to reinforce here is that we've got dedicated student support space over here in the new classroom building, as well as along this edge with open sliding walls that can be porous on both ends. So now we're kind of linking and pulling this quad space together with all of these services that the site will then further develop and design to really strengthen this whole new core and vision for the center of Menlo Atherton. This is old gym improvements. That's a bit of a stretch. So don't, what we're looking at here is really, MA's got one of the largest, athletics programs, and they've got a very, very small weight room. So we're looking at creating a new weight room. We've looked at a couple of different sites. This is one of the two sites as a possibility, and then taking their existing weight room and just simply putting some lockers in there and doing virtually almost no renovation to the space, with all of the emphasis over here, and then adding another classroom that's attached to that space, infrastructure as well. And the projects that are sort of fit within the phase one grouping would be the new classroom, N1, the renovation to B Wing South, which is R1, S1, which would be the bleachers and press box, and then the super efficient weight room and classroom. God bless you. And then the solar and infrastructure projects. And this is going to increase MA's classroom count by 4, 2 more campuses, and then we're almost wrapped up. Thanks for your patience here. Sequoia, a really, really exciting and unique challenge. As I mentioned before, everything's in the big building, and you've got half of the land is open to this gorgeous sort of forested grove, which is an asset and a challenge at the same time. Existing campus. So we looked at I think a really exciting idea. Some of the biggest challenges that this campus has really is wayfinding, identity, and how things work inside the main building, and all of the resources from counseling, the college and career center, all of those types of functions are shoehorned into classrooms that were built in the 20s. They don't really work, and they're really hard to find, and they're really hard to get to. And so our approach was to decant some of those functions, place them into a new building that could also be surrounded with classrooms, and then create a better and more consolidated use of that space within the main building, which I'll show you in a second. So the big move here really is to renovate the dark blue portions of the main building and create a new building out here in this space. The main grove really is up in here, but as you get closer to the gym and the field, it's undeveloped and has potential, and it helps to kind of do a couple things. One is having counseling and adult supervision out in this space on a full-time basis helps you keep better eyes onto the grove, and it allows a better opportunity to kind of create better space outside on the other side of the existing NPR building. And so one of the other ideas we're going to show you is a very, very light touch on the NPR, but to open it in a much better way on both sides so that you can have this outdoor space and a newly created outdoor space sort of flow through in and out, but then kind of be held back by a new building over here. So N1 is this new building with counseling services, or student support space, I should say, is defined at this point. Renovations to the main building with an emphasis on the corridors, but doing window replacements, doing the full HVAC, restrooms and whatnot. I mentioned the MUR improvements. Then they had a series of other ads that they're asked, which are probably below the line. Renovations at Carrington Hall, renovations at the Student Union, locker rooms high on the list, new fields in the back, and then other work over here as well. So to blow up N1, 2-story building with counseling, and then a breezeway that cuts through so we have visibility and eyes on the practice field, and then classrooms down at this level. And this starts to kind of frame out, we're sort of showing an idea of a quad. This would obviously be developed much further during design. And then on the second floor, you'd have classrooms up above. Renovations to R1, this should give you an idea. Right now, this is the existing condition with college and career up here. You kind of, everything's sort of shoehorned in this dark blue areas and counseling over here. And so what we'd be looking at doing is really adding 2 classrooms here and then pulling all of those functions down over into here and renovating the space into much better and much more usable areas. So you'd have the main entrance, and then you'd have a front desk that you'd be able to look out with eyes on the front door and eyes on this front space, so that as you come in, the wayfinding, the identity becomes much, much stronger. And then consolidating all those spaces because we've decanted counseling over into the new building. R2, the idea is simply, we've got there's this great opportunity that we can take like the 2 windows and a door and create like a sliding door like this is a project we did over in East San Jose to just kind of open up this wall during lunchtime and then do the same thing on the other side. Infrastructure projects similar to the other campuses. And so here's what we're looking at for Sequoia. And it's basically the new building in conjunction with the renovation and improvements of the main building, the MUR improvements, the locker rooms, and then the utility projects. This will increase, it adds 8 new classrooms and 2 classrooms free up inside the main building. So there's a net 10 classroom increase. Last campus to talk about on the main campuses is Woodside. Here's the plan. They prioritize replacement of wings that are original to the campus, looking at the B wing and or the E wing. The E wing was identified as the most important wing to touch, and then possibly also the portables that are down over the mods that are down at this end. So you really have density here and then a new building over at this location. Renovations to the D wing here, and with an emphasis on student support. And then locker rooms, weight room, gym, kind of round out the last of the moves here on this campus. So to focus on N1, in some ways a similar concept, but turned sideways as to what we saw at Carlmont. There's a lot of grade that we can take advantage of specifically and uniquely to the E-wing. We can dig down, and so that all these classrooms at this level can then open, and we can flatten out this plaza space here so that these classrooms will open directly onto the F-wing classrooms and kind of create a greater sense of community. As you go up a floor, you'd have classrooms that stack here, and we can adjust the grades out in this space so that these classrooms here and this possible career center or student support services can spill out onto this space, and then all of these spaces are more or less at grade. And then you go up another level still from there and then have classrooms up above. So really it's a 2 to 3 story building that's cut into the hillside with some digging down and adjustments slightly up, where the top of the roof though would then more or less align with the height of the library building. So we're gaining some height in the space, but when you figure in the library roof as well as the theater, and then this wing, as you start to kind of build a denser urban core within the center of the campus. N2 is really kind of mimicking in some ways the J wing and taking advantage of how much do we think we should comfortably build over in that space. We believe we can accomplish about 12 classrooms. And then the modernization of the D wing in some ways goes part and parcel with the new wing at the E wing, where you have we take out the classrooms and completely open it up, similar to those photos I showed earlier, and have some of the dedicated student support services here, spilling out onto the quad here, and then having the college and career spaces or to be determined by the school site that can then spill out over into here, all kind of hanging off of near the MUR and then the main quad space. The projects that fit that we believe would be N1, R1, which is the D-wing modernization. And then they're looking at, they had prioritized the baseball field over the locker rooms, but it looks like it might be a pivot between baseball or locker rooms, and then the solar and the other miscellaneous upgrades. So I just want to stress the N2 doesn't fit as far as between the two. And so therefore, if you're looking at the phase 1 classrooms column, is really kind of where things settle out, which is a +1 and 21 new classrooms to the sites. For the small school sites, we're looking at renovations to the adult school and some minor improvements, as well as finishes upgrades. For Trace, we're targeting to replace the portables with a new modular classroom wing to kind of give them a newer campus. And then we're just showing aerials right now because we've only provided allowances, but looking for EPA Academy to have 2 new portables, one as a classroom and one as an office. And then we provided a budget allowance to relocate the AA campus, as I look at the slide. Green Street program to be determined. All right. Home stretch. Master planning the budget total. So this is a slide I don't want to focus on too much other than this subtotal gray line here identifies all of the projects that got put on the list. So this is the needs, but then also some of the wants, and some of the campuses had some bigger wants that didn't fit within phase one than others. But when you take those projects and then you add them up down below here of the 665, the point I want to make with this slide is that when you add in all of the program contingencies, the escalation, the expenses from those percentage slides that I had shown you earlier, it's about 33%. So there's almost been an identified need of approximately $1 billion. Now, when we look at the prioritized projects, though, here's how things have kind of settled out across the campuses. And so what we've done is we've listed out the costs in columns by each campus. So you've got Carlmont, Menlo Atherton, Sequoia, Woodside, and then a column for the small schools. There's a few little minor infrastructure projects for the district. And then we broke them horizontally into new classroom construction, classroom renovations, the PE site projects. We itemized solar outside of this number, and then the infrastructure projects to give you a sense as to how the percentages are working out across each campus, and then how some of the allocations are working out towards the types of projects. What's interesting to see is that we've got nearly 70% is being dedicated towards specific classroom improvements. And that includes classrooms as well as student support space. And then about 12% for site and athletic projects. And then roughly, 18, 19, 20% for all of the infrastructure as well as the solar projects. Now, you can kind of see how the allocations shake out across the different campuses. But one thing I want to note is that the Sequoia number, if you see the 110 million, that includes HVAC upgrades to the main building. And so the other campuses are moving forward with funding outside of the current bond allocation. And so if you were to deduct that amount from the Sequoia number to get a sort of an apples to apples comparison, that would take approximately $8 to $10 million out of it, dropping Sequoia down to about $100 million, putting it close to within parity of these other school sites. Now, this little campus budget / student and percent total, what we did was we took the gray subtotal. So for example, of Carlmont, we took the 94 million and then divided it by the student population. So that way you can kind of have another metric to look at this to see how much money is being allocated to each school site on a per student basis. And so that way you can kind of see, Carlmont, is, 21%, MA is 23%. Sequoia is a bit of an anomaly because of the HVAC, but then even though Woodside is getting 88 million, they're actually getting slightly more on a per capita student basis. Now, how does this total? If you look on the bottom right, we then drop these subtotals down on today's present day total project costs, add in the 14 million for temp housing, add in the 23% of escalation, and then the 3.5% of program and allowances and contingencies, which gets us to about $615 million. The Measure W bond program is set at 590, and we have an allowance and an assumption of 4% bond interest over the life of the measure, which then sets us to available funding of about $613,600,000. So we debated back and forth, but working together with the district, we're bringing forward to you and just showing that that this model as of now is 0.3% over, which is in the noise and in the weeds, if you will. That escalation number has the potential to easily absorb that, as well as some flexibility with infrastructure and other types of things as well. There's some on-deck projects that have been identified. I'm not going to go into these too much here, but as contingencies free up later on into the project, there's the possibility of adding more work to the program. And I wanted to just close with this one slide and to identify really kind of when we zoom out and think about all of the things that this plan does, it's really exciting. We're going to have 71 new classrooms. We're adding almost 20 to the district. We're going to create 35,000 square feet of reinvigorated and or new student support service space. To me, that's really, really exciting. The energy efficiency with the HVAC projects are going to be phenomenal. We're going to add nearly 1,000 solar panels to your district. And to me, really though, that the, with starting with the master planning, but we'll carry forward in the design is really the bullet at the very end of this, which is it's all about kind of invigorating the campus culture, the student life, and creating an atmosphere, where everybody can thrive. So thank you for your patience. It's been a lot of work, and we're happy to be here.
Thank you. So I guess I'll first ask, we've been going for about 2 hours just on process. If we want to take a short break before, and then maybe during the short break, we can talk about how to run this discussion to follow, because we've just been through so much. So maybe we find a way to, I have some ideas I want to run by you. So why don't we take, what is it? 8 o'clock now. So we'll come back at 8:10. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So we're now going to have a discussion about the presentation we just heard. What we're going to do is we're going to start by hearing comments from the public. And then we're going to have the board discussion go through 5 different steps. Step 1 is going to be comments about the projects in general that don't relate to any specific site in any way. Just questions about the whole project. And then we'll see if it makes sense to just have us look at the slide on our screens, or to have these come forward and we'll kind of see if there are any specific questions about what's being considered at each of these sites. And then we could look, I mean, it'll be 6 would be if there's questions about the small site. So again, it'll be project overall, each of the 4 that we have here on the easels, and then other sites as the areas of the discussion. And so I'm gonna be kind of strict about keeping to that topic and knowing that we'll get to all of them. I'm just looking at everybody, Shawnice. I'm looking left and right. You're just making eye contact. Okay, so let's first start with any comments from the public.
I do have one comment card from Ada Salvatore.
We're gonna build this together. I of course left my notes over there, but I will think from memory. My first concern was about the engagement process for this. I'm speaking as a teacher at Sequoia High School. I looked in my email for May of 2022, and there is nothing that came to me as a teacher inviting me to an all school or school-wide input session. I have no memory of a survey or of anything of that sort. And the highly engaged work group, Superintendent Leach provided me with the sign-in sheets from that, and there was not a classroom teacher on that group. There's one person who teaches one class currently, but has been out of the classroom for the other 80% of her job for the last 5 or 6 years. So I'm very concerned about that. I can't speak for the other sites, but I think it's really important that we had classroom teacher input and family and community input. And if I didn't get that as a classroom teacher, I don't trust that the families and students who were not represented in that room did. I was concerned in hearing the presentation about MA that there are tiny classrooms. And I mean, physically, when I walk into them coming from Sequoia High School with the oldest building in the district, I walk into C-wing classrooms and feel like I have to duck to get in there. They are tiny and they are not anywhere on the board to be renovated. And I want to applaud the focus on adding common meeting space and on support space. And I hope that when we are looking at this, though I cannot advocate for things that are in our current bargaining proposal, somewhere down the line, hopefully, we are going to have better ratios for our counselors and other support personnel. And we want to make sure that anything we are embarking on now is going to provide us the office space, a confidential meeting office space that is needed for that. So if we currently have 5 or 6 counselors at a site and this plan calls for 5 or 6 counselor meeting offices, we need to make sure we're looking at more than that, because we will need more than that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Edith. So now we're gonna, each board member will get a chance, including student trustees, to ask any questions about the presentation in general without asking your question about any specific site. I have several lists of questions, but I'll go last. So if anybody wants to raise their hand and go first, go for it. Okay, go ahead, Shawnee.
I have a question. There was I don't know if you can go back to the slides. There was 4 quadrants and buckets of topics or buckets of interest. Am I saying that right? Where when people gave input, you kind of put it in these 4 buckets. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
I would like for you to go back to that because I have a question about that one. Excuse me. There it is.
Let's look at this one here.
But then, yes. So you talked about placing things in the 4 buckets, particularly the student support spaces, what I have most of my questions at. I'm very happy about the solar and things of that sort. And I also want to talk about the bathrooms because last couple of years, there's been a lot of questions. So if you can go down to the next slide that's similar to that one that kind of says where you landed, past that, like, let me give you a number. Like, no, down, yeah, 20, right there. Thank you. So then when we talked about the enhanced student services, I was like really excited about the student unions, to be honest. And so I just wanted, are those slashed out or included in student services? Like, what was the discussion around that?
We started early in the process where we iterated some ideas of larger student unions, but as we looked at how things would fit within sort of budgetary targets, it was impacting our ability to create new modern classrooms. And so think of it's a variety of different terms that can be used. And I think we tried to design these in a way where you can maybe even think of them as like student union light.
Student union like
or light. And in the sense that you might not have a very large indoor gathering social hall space like you might find at a collegiate level student union, but you're gonna we've conceived the student support service spaces where there's combination of flexible large conference rooms, small hub meeting rooms. Some of them can be occupied by counseling and sort of adult supervision. So you have these spaces where there's adults that are also functioning and can be shoulder to shoulder with students, and then have them immediately adjacent an outdoor space so they can spill out. So it starts to kind of create an atmosphere like a student union, but it might not have the food component or the really large noisy social gathering piece.
Okay. I'm just kind of, I'm looking at Bonnie. I know Bonnie, or since Elizabeth not here, I'm looking at you. I'm just thinking about some of our goals around building community, and space really provides that. Because if you're co-located in a lot of space, particularly students, and when I'm thinking about students come from, we have like several different school districts feeding into different campuses. And so how do you bring students together outside of like intentional activities, but also spacing? So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I know it's too late to give input to that, but just had some questions around that. And then I want to ask you more about that, but
I want just real quick, trustee Stevenson. I mean, when we went into the stakeholder engagement, we were super excited about sharing the ideas of the student union. When it was brought into some of the stakeholder meetings that I attended, there was like this lots of buzz and excitement. And then when we started to really dive in on what their definition of a student union was, that's when you start to see everyone kind of have different definitions, right? And so like with you talking about areas where large bodies of students can gather, although not indoor, primarily not necessary because we have such great weather. That was definitely a focal point in all of the designs throughout the campuses and was a strong desire of the stakeholders that did contribute.
okay, thank you. So it sounds like it's integrated, but maybe the functionality of it may look different. Okay. The next thing was the restrooms. Over the last couple of years, we have had some of our students with who have different gender expressions and orientations really talk about bathrooms being an issue, whether they have to go to certain bathrooms across the campus or they have to close down. And literally, it's only because of the structure of the bathroom and the locations of the bathrooms. And so can you tell me a little bit more about what you all are thinking based off the community feedback about the bathrooms? And mostly this has come from students.
We heard similar feedback at the stakeholder workshops from students about creating a variety of different types of restroom experiences, such as gender nonconforming and whatnot. And so at the planning stage, we've allocated a significant amount to renovate existing restrooms in place, as well as create some additional new restrooms and to address this need.
Okay. I just want to make sure like we advertise that to some of our students who've been sharing that concern about the bathrooms. I think that's an important one to share. And I know we've gotten some information from some of our politically allied groups around making sure that we do those things. So,
And it really is the way of moving forward in today's building processes and how we build schools. But so that's definitely at top of mind and is a part of the planning. And you would start to see that more when you actually get into design. But we did from the students that participated, because we had students on focus groups and then we had just a student one. And one of the stakeholder meetings, I think it was Woodside, we had a couple students and then we had some parents, and watching that conversation about the bathroom, and there was like a couple dads in there and they just didn't quite understand. So there was a lot of educating going on at different levels, but the message was heard loud and clear and would be a part of the design process.
What I want to do is
And
we'll come back and you'll go again.
oh, I'm only allowed to ask.
I just want to let everybody have a chance. I think it's just, let's try to have it go around. If that's okay. Or you want to ask all of your questions
I
before anyone else?
wanted to ask my rest of my bathroom question.
Oh, okay. Still in the bathroom. Sorry.
Thank you. So no disrespect. But my other bathroom question was, I know there's certain campuses deal with safety issues around the bathroom. And so the structure of the bathroom, I actually, when I start going to some of the history classes and doing talks about being a trustee, that was one of the questions that kids said, how can I advocate around not just gender expression, but safety of bathrooms and structure differences? Did that come up in any of your community engagement?
That did not to that degree. However, at a planning level, it's more of identifying a need that we need to explore different ways to renovate existing restrooms to serve these types of needs, to create safer environments, as well as greater acceptance of gender neutrality. And then also looking at the dispersion of the restrooms and where they're located so that you can create safer environments for them.
Okay, thank you.
Good topic.
Yeah, so I had a couple questions. First, I was curious how the money, or how we decided to divvy up the bond money between individual school sites. Like, how is that going to be decided? Like how much money each school site gets for their specific projects?
We started with looking at kind of the project needs across the sites and identifying the top priorities within each campus, distributing it the way that kind of within the model that we presented here tonight, and then balancing that out to achieve as much equity as we possibly could across the campuses.
So, would you say between the 4 big schools, there's a relative equality in terms of how much money each school's site is getting, or?
Yes.
Okay. And I'll bring this up more in specific parts, but I was curious, like, have you found parking to be a general issue? Because I was just surprised to see that there wasn't anything about building more parking spaces, at least in some campuses that I know, it seems to be an issue that I've heard about lack of parking spaces, mainly for students.
Yeah, the challenge with parking is a land use issue. Parking takes up a tremendous amount of space. Your campuses are already starved of available space in a lot of ways, and the cost per stall is extremely high. We talked about it at Carlmont. One of the project ideas that didn't make the cut was to build a parking structure at where the tennis courts were, put the tennis courts on top. We talked about subterranean parking at MA at the early stages. So there were lots of crazy big ideas, very blue sky. So yes, it was identified as a need, but when measured against, I think the other needs, the classrooms really emerged as a top priority.
Okay, that's it. I'll bring up parking more for specifics for school sites, but thank you.
Okay, Carrie?
Couple of questions. So I was also very excited to see the solar improvements, and I'm wondering, will somebody be updating the student-led sustainability committee will be very excited about that. Will somebody be updating them on that? And then also related to that is, I don't have a sense of, is that a significant improvement, a little improvement? Yeah, is it significant?
Yes, it is significant.
Okay.
It is a significant improvement. When we started thinking about going out for a bond, I met with the sustainability committee, which was quite small and has evolved significantly since the time that I met with them. I tried to get them involved in the deferred maintenance plan, but it was a little too large. But we did hear individually at the sites during the stakeholder engagement the desire for sustainable campuses in water and solar and building materials, and just really how we think about the design and waste that comes off of the campuses. With the recent communication from the Sustainability Committee, I have shared with them that there is a significant amount of solar in the facilities master plan. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is, I guess, related to what Edith said. I am concerned because I think teacher input for me as an individual board member is a priority. And when I think about our challenges as a district, one of our challenges is teacher stress and teacher retention. And I was just in my own mind thinking, can facilities help with those issues? Yes, air conditioning, right? Because that has been a bigger issue lately. Teachers have been miserable, right? In some of the classes. But anyway, I'm just concerned because teacher voice to me is really important because the product we deliver.
We had, it's unfortunate that was Sequoia's experience because that was not the experience at the other sites. And we have the sign-in sheets, and we had 100% faculty meetings and 100% student and parent meetings, as in addition to the independent focus groups. That was like a selective. Sequoia only had the focus groups. So that is something that we can revisit with Sequoia staff. Again, this is planning and need. There is still far more design. As far as the air conditioning goes, the board had already approved our air conditioning project district-wide. What wasn't in there is the long-term solution for the admin building at Sequoia, only a temporary solution from there. But we do have the outreach that was done at the other sites,
Yeah,
which
and
we
just
can
to,
share.
again, to kind of follow up this idea of teacher stress, like this idea of indoor outdoor spaces is a way of alleviating stress. Are there other things that came up or other ways that buildings actually help with, worker motivation, feeling taken care of? Are there other topics like that that went into?
They didn't come up necessarily at the school site meetings, and kind of staying high level and thinking about all of the school sites really is that this really links back to sustainable design. And I know I didn't touch on that very much, but what will be implemented in all of the new work are an incredible amount of sustainable design features: good ventilation, abundance of natural daylight, adjacency to outdoor spaces, natural environment. There's a ton of studies that are done that when you have those types of spaces and facilities, test scores go up, you have greater retention of students attending, people are happier, you get teachers that are happier, and so on. So we're looking, it might be hard to see it in the blow-ups because we're looking at planning diagrams, but we're looking at creating outdoor spaces with each of the new work to kind of create those better environments.
Thank you.
Amy?
Yeah, I had a general question about whether what was considered around safe schools, because I saw on one of the slides that there was some things that were brought about pedestrian safety, like bus stop safety. But having been to different campuses myself, I think the large schools have multiple entry points, and it's actually pretty unclear where visitors are supposed to go to check in. And so if the goal is for all visitors to obtain a visitor badge, both for security and emergency evacuation purposes, what were some ideas brought up?
We had extensive talks with the site committees about this topic, and we went back and forth. And the challenges, as you mentioned, is sort of the size and the design of these campuses, is that you've got these sprawling campuses, and it's a debate between how fortified do you make your school sites versus how open and more of an academic environment do you want to have for your students. And so we talked about better identification of where the front door is, where you need to go. Everybody bristled, though, through all of the engagement processes, both at the beginning and the end of the planning, about additional fencing between wings. And so, you go to some schools where it's like, it's a fortress and you go through that one door. To create that at your campuses is going to be extremely challenging. So we kind of were weighing the pros and cons of that.
But maybe even improved signage would be a good start, right? Because I'm a new trustee, so I go to these campuses and I go, where's the office?
The front door.
I don't even.
Zara, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually had a question about the focus groups and student input. Obviously, I'm new here, so I don't fully know the process that you guys went through, but I was wondering, like, how were you talking to students? What did that kind of recruitment look like? Were the principal selecting students, or?
It was, we laid out a process of sort of what I was talking about with, it was like starting with the principal, then a site committee, then having a broader forum, and all of those were routed through the school sites, namely the principals, to engage and recruit those individuals.
And do you have an idea of like roughly how many students you talked to per site?
We had about 3 or 4 students within each focus group, and then we had, I think, 6 or 7, I recall, at least per forum.
So we offered the staff and the family meetings via Zoom. We held them at night. And principals pushed out those invitations to their entire community in their weekly newsletters, pushed it out through getting student voice. And yeah, it was about a handful at each site. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Shanisa, I actually had a bathroom question too, so I thank you for asking that one. You listed escalation estimations of 8.5, 7.5, 5.5, and 5. My prior experience working with you was escalations vastly exceeded the estimates every time. Do you know what actual escalations were the last few years? Were they higher or lower than 8.5?
They topped out at around 8.5. We had a short burst of 10, but that was just for a few months at the peak of what we were experiencing in the economy. But prior to that, it's been, 7 and 8.
Okay, so 8.5 for the 1 year forward is not significantly less than what's recently happened.
Yeah.
Okay. Regarding the solar, was there any analysis about IRR? Like how much power would it produce? What would it cost to buy that power if we didn't do the solar, to see that the power produced by the solar is a reasonable investment?
We've just looked at it as an allowance at this stage of the process to make sure that we're allocating funding for those types of projects. As far as drilling down more deeply into the design of solar systems and the final capacity and need, we have not.
Is it common for school districts to know whether the investment is positive yielding before they do it?
Yes.
Okay, so we would expect to see like an analysis of power produced, estimated power savings from producing this power over the life of the panels, and that it.
Correct. And that would come at the design stage of the
Okay.
project.
Excellent. You mentioned a number of new classrooms district-wide. I think it was 19. Is there a similar number of, going to Edith's comment, of counselor space? Is there no change at the counselor space? Is there a change to the counselor space? In just what you presented, you mentioned classrooms, you didn't mention counselor space, so just kind of asking.
We looked at an increase. The way we treated that was we identified counseling and administrative support space and how much existing square footage is present on the campus. And as you saw, each campus had a slightly different solution, but in each condition, we increased the square footage anywhere from, 20 to 35%, per campus. So there is an increase on those spaces.
Okay, thank you. Let's circle back around. If anybody has additional questions about the projects overall, not site specific. If you didn't ask everything you want to, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I had one additional question. I know trustee Nori brought up parking earlier, but I guess at the same time, I think one way to look at it is how can we encourage walking, biking, and taking the bus? So I don't know if that was considered as part of like safe routes to school and how that might be impacted by the way the facilities are designed.
We talked about it at a couple of campuses, not at the level of the Safe Routes to School program, but rather looking at creating, some safer connections at Menlo Atherton, increased bike parking, and so on and so forth.
Shanice, do you have additional questions about the overall project? Okay, one general question that when Sophic and I were on our coast to coast trip in Washington, DC, we met other trustees, and one of them was dealing with a super major issue having to do with turf versus grass.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's something, turf versus grass. I think they put in an artificial field, and the community was very upset about having an artificial field, and there's different stuff about the different fillings and all of this. So I noted you use the word turf. Is that just widely accepted in this region that everyone uses a certain kind? Is there anything we should be aware of and consider as we are approving a project for the fields, so that we don't end up in what we observed others? It was, I think, maybe it's not a high school issue. I don't know if I don't know very much about this. I'm just kind of asking broadly if there's something we should watch out for or be aware of as we're looking at that area of this.
I think at the high school level, turf is a widely accepted material. Initially, turf had problems of the type of fill that was added to it. It was recycled car tires, and it would be 110 degrees on the field. They've now typically use coconut shell holes that get ground down. And so it's a more natural, sustainable, recycled product. It's much cooler. And so the technology of these have evolved. And I think there's a lot of perception that's out there that is thinking more along the lines of the way turf used to be. The water savings is immense. You still have maintenance, but it's not necessarily to the extent that you have on a daily basis with, grass. Okay.
And just to touch on that, in the past recent months, the board has approved new turf and the infill has changed along with the amount of shock absorbance for that underlay in areas where we've currently have turf. Where some of the conversation came up here was more about the outfield in the baseball, which I still have some concerns. That's a major shift of what we have. It's a huge expense. At some sites, I'm still not 100, I'm just still a little nervous. I've been talking with Brent about some of the piping that goes underneath. And so there's far more exploration if we were going to add turf to outfields at our baseball and softball fields.
I wasn't advocating for any change. I was just asking the question. Okay, so I think that concludes questions about the project overall. So maybe I'll say if any trustee has any question on any specific site, then we'll just all ask any questions about that site and we'll just let go like that. Carrie, do you have one?
About a specific site. It's our adult school, which is, I think, our most, what's the word? I'm getting tired. Neglected campus.
Okay.
And
What I was hoping to do is we'll go
Oh.
through the 4 big sites first. And then we'll
and then
do
go
the other
small?
sites afterwards.
Oh, I don't have anything
So
specific.
does anyone, yeah, let's just do the 4 that we have here on the easels and then we'll go to the other sites. Go ahead, Sahara.
Yeah, kind of what Trustee Nori was saying earlier on parking. I know specifically that's a huge issue at Menlo Atherton. It's something that's been brought up at Site Council a lot and is a common concern with students and staff, especially with the overselling of parking permits. And so there are way more cars than there are spots. And I don't know if this is something that we necessarily have the power to change, but I think one of the specific problems at MA is that the surrounding areas are very blocked off to parking by students. There's a lot of signs, no Menlo Atherton parking, no parking. And I don't necessarily know what the situation is at other sites, but if that's maybe something we could lobby for, if building more parking spaces isn't kind of a fiscally solid plan.
I do, just because we're on the parking topic, I have been in contact with the PTSA and they've been doing some traffic studies to even just work on that flow, which did come up during some of our planning phases in front. So everyone in all of the areas was definitely very vocal that we have challenges related to traffic flow and overall parking at MA.
Yeah, and if I could just quickly add on, I think this is a huge issue for people in my community at MA. I know if you're a sophomore, it's basically impossible to find a parking or spot on campus or get a permit. And I really think there are solutions to this problem that are, not going to break the bank budget wise, like whether it be building more parking on Ringwood, like away from a lot. Like I know Carlmont has a senior parking lot. So doing something like that, I do think it's a necessity. And I think if we got this bond, I think it would greatly benefit MA to have more parking spaces.
Is there an advocacy opportunity with the town of Atherton or anywhere to have off-site parking?
There is housing going across the street.
I think there's always opportunity for advocacy. As Brent shared, our capacity for the site, I mean, could we probably add a few? Yes.
I meant like off-site parking.
Yeah, I mean, I know that since I've been here, I've heard several conversations and we tend to fall short outside of like events. I think events is when we've been able to secure additional parking, but not on an everyday basis, unfortunately.
Okay, does anybody else have questions about the MA plan? I said one question. I've had many parents advocate with me about the softball field, and I heard baseball and I heard football. Was softball discussed at all in your discussions of what to do at the MA site?
There was concerns around the fields and the baseball fields in general as it relates to the drainage. That was about the extent of
When you say baseball, does that mean baseball and softball or only the
they're
baseball?
all the fields together.
Is that yeah, okay.
Yeah, the baseball and softball fields in combination.
Okay, I think it'd be great when we're talking about the baseball field to maybe call it the baseball and softball field just for our purposes. Okay, I think that concludes the discussion about the MA site. Does anybody have questions about any of the other ones for which we have? Go ahead, Shanice.
I want to talk about Carmine. That's an interesting campus. It's a very difficult campus to navigate, and there's so I was really had some questions there. It's just very odd campus for me. It's not as smooth with the traffic. I hear a lot about traffic over there. I have a few folks who I know who attend that campus and really was up in arms around traffic and mobility right off of the main road. I know when I went over there, beautiful, beautiful football field, horrible, what do they call bleachers? I was like, there's some work to be done. So I want to commend you for figuring out how to make it more space and more efficient. I also have questions just about like, what are the main issues that are there when because I was thinking about flooding, I was thinking about parking, I was thinking about the flow of traffic. What were some of their main concerns there? Because I have some in my head, but I don't want to talk about them if I don't live on that campus. So I just had a lot of questions about Carmine.
Carmont, I think, their number one priority that they talked about, and it was from the top all the way down, was the T-wing and replacing that building. They felt that their classrooms that are some of the original wings, they've got good bones and are nice spaces. And so they didn't, sort of less emphasis there. They've got some problems that are very difficult to solve. And that's kind of what we were confronted with. Sort of the identity wayfinding front door, that was a really big issue for them. And we tried to accomplish that with, if you look at the drawing on the right, which is, well, if you know the campus, it's sort of the admin building and then how you walk up from the main parking lot into sort of what we'll call the front door of the school. And that was a project that as it grew, to some degree, I don't say they struggled, but it was like the T-wing was the emphasis. And so this idea of creating more space, that would probably another component to this is really, they've got 2,400 kids now, and they've got one of the smallest footprints of campus of square footage. And it's the grade to wing is like 6 feet. You get your steps in when you're on that school site. So Gay identified, if we can create more places for kids to gather. And so we really tried to take the T-wing concept and leverage that with that nice quad space that's at the S-wing to, if you look at the amount of space that creates, it's actually as large, if not larger, than their main street zone that's on the backside of the football stadium.
Okay. I don't have any answers. I just know that I went over there and that was a difficult, I've gone to many places over there. I was like, where is the front of the building? Like how so many steps for people, especially with disabilities. I was wondering about flooding. I was like, well, maybe y'all don't have that issue, but okay, yeah. So I'm, I love Carmont, but that's an interesting campus. Thank you.
Any other questions about the Carmont campus?
Yeah, I was curious, like, as we're doing the facilities master plan, is there any coordination with the Four Corners project and that whole Alameda de las Pulgas corridor?
That was brought to our attention, and we looked at that a little bit as it relates to sort of parking and circulation. We would, that's something that would have to be further developed, I think, with the traffic study, and to kind of assess what the overall impacts are going to be.
Okay, any other questions about the Carmont site? So I just had one question on looking at the map, what's at the bottom left, there's buildings that are if I recall correctly, older than the buildings that are slightly to the right on the map, where there's like a nice covered. And then it sort of seems as though they just ran out of money and weren't able to finish the wing next door. That's how it sort of felt to me when I visited, and I don't know, maybe that's not what happened, but it feels like what happened. And maybe it's just that when you looked at what to do, this seems better and that's saved for some future project. Is that?
Exactly. We studied that as well, and it was the most bang for your buck, so to speak, was the T-wing and the T-wing expansion because of the outdoor space you also are able to create. And the future, those wings could be developed and expanded as well, the ones you were referring to. Those wings will get, roof resurfacing, painting, renovation improvements, as we identified. So those will not be completely untouched.
Okay, great. Does anybody have any questions about the sites we haven't covered? We haven't covered Woodside or Sequoia. Of course you can go.
I'd like to draw the attention to Sequoia and the conversations that were had at that site, especially with that admin building being a historic building. And as we talked about earlier with, so much of the school being housed in there, and then trying to get the biggest bang for our buck as far as what we could do with that site. When Brent shared with me the idea of putting a building out there, I was like, nobody's ever going to go for that. And I talked to Bonnie about it too, and we were just like, no. And then I was pleasantly surprised that the people who did attend the stakeholder meetings were supportive of that site. So as we further digest the other staff on the Sequoia site, it will be interesting to see how everyone feels about a new building there. But it's really a balancing act when you're dealing with a historic building. We need to be very cautious as we work in that building. It could take up more than half of the bond if we weren't careful. So it's really about being able to build up the other areas on that campus. But address, some of the main issues that I've heard from staff that are located in that main building over the past couple of years.
Okay. Here, now we'll talk about the other sites.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped the gun. So in thinking about, the adult school, it's odd duck, really. It really should be funded out of the community college system, right? But it's not. So it really is our school. And when you think about equity, it's the most neglected campus, right? So many years ago, we were going to build a new adult school, and that's where Summit was housed. And when I know Shanice and I believe Amy, well, I guess all four of us have been to adult school recently. And it really doesn't look good. And one of the things we talked about at the last meeting, it is a community treasure. And it's the place where our, high school dropouts sometimes end up, where new community members who need education show up. It is a community treasure. And so I'm wondering if it has enough of a budget. And I am getting comments from community members. There is concern. This is from a community member who I think knows. It's somebody who's a community college professor and knows our students. And she said because of the lack of parking, students circle and circle and circle that neighborhood and then give up, right? And that's not what we want. So I wonder if that school needs a little bit more attention.
That site is extremely limited for what we can and can't do. I wasn't here. It was actually the Everett School that went into the building that was planned and built out for adult school. And then they ended up where they currently are. Not much flexibility there with parking. And even the inner workings of the building, just with what is located on the other side with that gas station, and then what's on the other side. I think that there is opportunity in the near future for potentially some of our other sites to open up as we do see declining enrollment. So that will be an interesting trend to watch to see if we have other properties that may be a better fit for the adult school. There's also a conversation about expanding the program and offering classes at some of our high schools. That's also a model that we can look into as well.
That would be good. So what is being planned is just a modest facelift,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So you're talking about a cinder block building. You're talking about classrooms with no outside walls and windows. It's
So is it painted
very
carpet?
different.
I didn't.
Yeah, I think like they have new windows, some ventilation upgrades, carpet, try to make it a little bit lighter and brighter. We own the parking lot back. That's gated. I don't know how many students are allowed to park back there or if parking is more set for the streets. It's actually a good location. It's just super restricted. It would be fabulous if we could acquire some property on either side of it, but right now that's just not available.
I wanted to thank you for that because I'm sad about that site, even though there's so much liveliness on the inside. And I think they're a great model for community engagement. I know that Warren Slocum, which is the board representative for that area, has put a lot into job training is going to be coming there and creating an economic center. And so there might be some ways we could collaborate. I'm not quite sure where it's going to be, but right now they're just doing a bunch of construction on the street. But I think for future parking, maybe looking at the church that's on the corner it's a little bit of a walk, but it's better than driving around for 20 or 30 minutes. It's just safety that we have to think about, especially if we have people walking alone and things of that sort, because it does get dark on that corner. We're talking to Redwood City about the school that's right across the way, or the grocery store that could maybe give us some parking space, like 5 or 6 parking spaces, so people aren't walking so far. But I am concerned about that site because they are turning out our graduates who aren't able to finish their high school diploma or GED, and I'm happy to be going to their graduation on Friday. And so I think we want people to feel good that they've been at our school district. So it's sad that others have taken over our space because then our own family don't have their space. So thank you for bringing that up.
I wanted to also add on the adult school because I did visit it, and it sounds like there are going to be some windows added, and because I think that'll make some difference in making it brighter and a little bit more energizing, because sometimes being able to look outside is a feel good type of thing. But yeah, I agree with Trustee Stevenson about thinking of partnerships and collaborations to make it easier for students to find parking, or even if it's a satellite parking, maybe there's a shuttle that takes them to there, right? So if a class starts at certain times and everyone parks at a more remote location, you could shuttle them in. But there's different things to consider, right?
I mean, MA is just like a mile and a half away. Well, I like the idea of creative solutions. I know that's not our agenda item tonight. Any other questions about any other of the I shouldn't say, any other sites that we haven't discussed? Ronnie, do you have something else? Okay, Sophic, do you have any other questions about any other site? Sahara? Brent, thanks so much.
You all very much.
Can we talk about next steps for completing the document? I think this was like a update and so do you want to talk offline or do you have anything to share with the group as a whole?
I think the next step will be if there's any minor refinements from here based on today's discussion, and then we will wrap up a master plan report. And then you and I guess we would discuss offline as to what the next steps would be after that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have our action items. Action item 15.1, approve the Sequoia High School District's 2023-24 local control and accountability plan.
I hope you will approve it. Thank you.
The end of the year. Really like how much we can talk about the thing, right?
Does any board member have any comments or questions, or do you have any comments from the public about the local control and accountability plan? Seeing none, to have a motion to approve.
I will make a motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Sophic raises hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next up is 15 to approve the East Palo Alto Academy 2023-24 local control and accountability plan. Did any board member have any comments or questions about this one?
And Amika's here via Zoom if you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Amika. Well, I was just going to ask, do we have any public comment on any of the action items?
I do have one for 15.4.
Okay, great. So do I have a motion to approve 15.2 approval of East Palo Alto Academy's 2023-2024 local control accountability plan?
I move to approve.
Thank you. Amy,
Oh, I second.
thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amika, for being available. Next is item 15.3, approval of the East Palo Alto Academy local control funding formula local indicators. Does any board member have any comments or questions about this item?
I want to thank Trustee Koo for her eagle eyes.
Oh.
You noticed a weird thing that happened with our formatting, which has since been corrected, and you have the corrected version. It should be posted soon, and that's what I'll send to the county. So thank you for saving us for any further embarrassment.
That was the only thing I had. Oh.
He's the new Alan Sarver, the careful proofreader.
I think I've.
That is very important.
Contract for
We always want to put our best foot forward, and I was so embarrassed. So thank you very much for having your eagle eyes.
I move to approve.
Item 15.3. Thank you for the motion. Amy,
I second.
thank you. All in favor of approving 15.3?
Aye.
Unanimously approved. So we have a public comment for item 15.4.
We do. I have a comment card from Ada Salvatore.
Ready? I believe item 15.4 is about the mandatory reserve and the declaration of what the reserve is. And again, not to bargain away from the bargaining table, I will make the point that has been, I heard once many years ago at a conference and has always stuck with me, which is that school boards and school districts are not banks, and their purpose is not to save money. It is to spend it on children. So $31.5 million is an excessive amount for us to not be spending on children. So I encourage you all to think of what makes the biggest bang with students and not to come back in August with 5 more administrative positions to spend that money on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, does any board member have any comment or question about item 15.4? Have a motion to approve item 15.4.
I move to approve.
I'll say.
Okay, everyone in favor of approving item 15.4?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimously approved. Next is item 15.5, adoption of proposed budget for the 2023-2024 school year. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this item? Okay, to have a motion to approve this item. Thank you, Shawnice makes the motion. Second.
I second.
Thank you, Amy. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that unanimously approved. Next is item 15.6, adoption of resolution number 1756, the 2023-2024 Education Protection Account by roll call vote. Does anybody have any questions or comment about this item? Okay, do I have a motion to approve item 15.6? Thank you, Shawnice. Second.
Second.
Seconded by Amy, and it's a roll call vote.
Trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois. Just Vice President Stevenson,
Yes.
President Ginn,
Yes,
motion passed.
thank you. Next is item 15.7, adoption of resolution number 1757, budgetary increases and transfers a year end for fiscal year 22-23 by roll call vote. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this item? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve item 15.7.
Thank you. A second. Thank you, Shawnice. Roll call vote.
Trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
Vice President Stevenson,
Yes.
President Ginn,
Yes,
motion adopted.
thank you. Next is item 15.8, adoption of resolution number 1758, temporary interfund, parentheses, loan, and parentheses, transfer at year end by roll call vote. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this item? Okay, seeing none. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve item 15.8.
Thank you. Thank you.
Trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
Vice President Stevens, trustee Dubois, Vice President Stevenson, President Ginn,
Yes,
motion adopted.
thank you. Next is item 15.9, approval of resolution number 1759, designating individuals authorized to sign orders by roll call vote. Do you have any comments or questions about this item? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve item 15.9.
Trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois, Vice President Stevenson,
Yes.
President Ginn,
Yes,
motion adopted.
thank you. Next is item 15.10, approval of contract with the Parent Venture for implementation of the Parent Education Series for 23-24 school year. Trustee Dubois, I know you're conflicted. Can you share the nature of your conflict with the board?
Yeah, I serve on the board of that organization, so I will need to abstain.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Does anybody have any comments or questions about trustee Dubois' involvement or any other comments or questions about this item? Or this item? Or about this item in general?
Okay, yes, about the item. Sorry, I thought you said about trust. I'm like. should I stay?
Either or, about
Okay.
any of it.
I'm tired. Okay. I have a question. I'm gonna look at, since Elizabeth is not here, Dr. Chacon. I always love parent ventures and all their workshops and everything. But I know it doesn't always get to some of our communities that speak second languages, or they have, it doesn't always meet them at their current need. Are we working closely with them? I know we don't have a wellness coordinator at this point. We may have one. But are we working closely with them for our more diverse population that receive information, or the topics may not be where their lived experiences are?
I believe that Parent Venture has expanded their offerings. I want to say the other day when I was talking to Liliana with the Newcomer Center, that they had also expanded to work with our ELAC and our DLAC parents along with our newcomer parents.
And they also have a contract with the Redwood City School District.
Mhm.
So they're in all of their schools,
Okay.
especially, what Redwood City describes as their Bayside schools. So it's actually part of their focus
Okay,
to do more.
okay.
But they definitely are expanding to,
To some, okay.
yes.
Because I went to a couple of parent liaison, they have their parent coffees and stuff like that. And there are lots of questions and they're using a lot of free services, but sometimes folks are trying to charge them for come in and talk to their families around like substance use or whatever. And so I was just trying to make sure that they're working actually with our parent liaisons. I know there's not like one parent coordinator for the district, but that it's getting to those families and we're responsive to their needs. So that was what I was thinking. Other than that, I have no problem with this. I just had that question and wanted it noted.
It would be really helpful to share those types of specifics so we could just try to do a light trace to see where potentially we're either missing the mark or we're not being able to push out different information
Yeah.
to all of our families.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any
do
other
have-
comments or questions?
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
did have one question too, because I know they were saying that they've transitioned a lot to virtual workshops and meetings. And I know way in the past I attended some in-person ones. So is there going to be a mixture at some point, or is it just all virtual? Because sometimes it's good to have some in-person workshops as well, and it helps to build that parent community versus completely virtual.
I would have to follow up, but I want to say it's coming back to be a mix the further we get away from COVID. Yes, because those were very popular.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions about item 1510? Okay, motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
I second.
Okay, this is not a roll call vote, but since we have someone needs to abstain, let's do a roll call vote anyway.
Trustee Nori,
I think you left.
Oh, is
Wait,
it-
can you hear me? Sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear.
Yeah, we
you.
can, yeah.
Oh yeah, I was gonna vote yes. Sorry, I think my connection dropped for a second.
okay, that's a yay for trustee Nori. Trustee Koo,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Abstain.
and abstain. Vice President Stevenson,
Approve. Yes.
President Ginn.
Yes,
Motion passed, 4 yeas and 1 abstain.
thank you. Next is item 15.11, consideration of adoption of resolution number 1755, authorizing the issuance of a 2023 to 2024 tax and revenue anticipation notes, also known as trans, and requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of San Mateo to issue and sell said notes in an amount not to exceed $12 million by roll call vote. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this item or anything they want to say about this item? Okay, do I have a motion to approve item 15.11?
I move to approve item 15.11.
Thank you. Second,
A second?
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
Oh, it's supposed to be roll.
Oh,
call.
roll call vote. My apologies. I missed the roll call vote at the end. Go ahead. Sorry.
Trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
Vice President Stevenson,
Yes.
President Ginn.
Yes.
Motion adopted.
Thank you. The next item is item 15.12, discussion, consideration, and approval of revised superintendent employment contract with Crystal Leach. This agenda item addresses the board's open session discussion and possible approval of an employment agreement with Superintendent Crystal Leach regarding her employment as superintendent of the district. Are there any comments from the public regarding this agenda item? Anyone on Zoom wish to make a comment? Anyone in person who wishes to make a comment, Laura?
I have none.
Okay. The proposed employment agreement addresses all of the material terms of the superintendent's employment, as well as the effective date of the employment agreement. The proposed employment agreement contains the following material terms: term and work year. The term of the superintendent employment agreement with the district will be July 1, 2023 to June 30, 2027. Superintendent compensation and other terms of employment. Number one, superintendent shall be paid beginning July 1, 2023, based upon an annualized salary of $325,000 and no cents. Number two, upon receipt of a satisfactory evaluation at the end of the 2023 to 2024 school year, the superintendent will be eligible for a 2.5% merit-based step advancement increase on July 1, 2024. Number three, superintendent shall receive a $100 per month expense allowance to cover transportation and travel expenses. Number four, superintendent shall be eligible to participate in the district's health, dental, and vision benefits program on the same terms and condition and subject to the same limitation as the district's management employees, as those benefits, plans, providers, and other terms and conditions may change from time to time. Number five, superintendent's terms of employment include the same work year and eligibility for sick leave, leave time, vacation, holidays, and district technology devices consistent with other full-time district classified management employees. Number six, superintendent's terms of employment also include professional meetings / dues and leadership and equity coaching. This concludes the summary of the proposed superintendent employment agreement. A complete copy of the superintendent employment agreement is available from the district office upon request. Is there a motion to approve this item?
Explanation.
No.
Can you talk in the mic? I can't.
Please, if you have a motion. Do you have a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Just asked him a clarifying question.
Good.
Do I have a second to approve?
I second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, so I missed, did you do an explanation of why we're doing this? Did I miss it? I might be tired.
We're revising the superintendent's employment agreement.
Okay.
And I read a script describing the details of the revisions to the superintendent employment
Okay,
agreement.
sorry, I'm getting tired.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay. Then can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
Vice President Stevenson,
Yes.
President Ginn.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. Next is future agenda items.
I have one.
Let's hear it.
I have been thinking a lot about starting our new year on new ground. And I know that I know it will go to the parking lot and we'll need to vote, like whatever our process we decided was going to be. No, no more retreats. I'm sorry. I love y'all, but I've had enough. Anyhow, I say that with love, y'all like family and like 3 days. We've had enough of each other. I do want to ask for you all to consider for a future item. I know we're thinking about strategic planning and communication, but in the meantime, until we actually have a plan, I have a really strong desire to really respect all the voices and ideas that are at the table, even those who are not at the table versus those who are just silently going along and those who just don't even know that we're having a meeting. And so when I chatted with our communication person, he talked a little bit with me around like looking at communication from two different ways of strategic communication and required communication, and really moving towards that strategic communication that really thinks about cultural competency language that takes into account the varying experiences of our diverse communities within our boundaries. So not just race and language, but really like the different thought patterns and opinions, and making sure we're kind of communicating so all communities can understand, and thinking about strategies for that, especially as we move into the fall. I know I've been talking to Trustee Dubois around healing strategies for our community that they've spoken about, and trying to be really thoughtful, such as talking about Ravenswood High School and how do we really acknowledge and kind of put a moralization on that, and an appreciation and learning from our historical practices. But this is also another way of moving forward, of creating healing. I already mentioned it to Trustee Jen. I was going to mention this today. So I'd like to put this on the agenda, kind of think about, even if we don't have a plan, but at least have it at the forefront for our PIO and for you to really look at the resources that we have to really support that.
So I guess when I hear that, my question would be like, what would that item look like? Would it be a discussion of the
think it
5
would
board members? Are you expecting for there to be a presentation?
It would be including DI framework in our communication, so that we have strategies around that. And it might be a direction on how to work with one of our contractors or our EDC or something, like whatever it is that we decide how that's going to look. But it's really putting that in our infrastructure and then helping us decide when there's strategic conversation and intentional work versus just required communication.
So did this stem from a conversation that you had with a consultant?
Yes.
Okay. That consultant is also aware of one of my goals for next year is a communication plan. A lot what you described would be, which my superintendent goals are also, we agreed, is our governance goals as far as a communication plan and also a strategic plan. Those are all of the inner workings of what would go into a communication plan, which I would also think would have probably a couple opportunities to gather feedback, to plan and design how our communication strategy looks like and what entails and what we want to be mindful of. I think like what you mentioned is an overall goal for like the complete plan. Like I'm trying to understand what that, like who's gonna.
I think getting ahead of some things that are going to be coming into the fall, and kind of thinking about some of our community engagement. How do we get people, how do we own our own story and communication strategy that really exemplifies our values around seeing all our communities as beautiful and needs and challenges
And how do we bring back that communication? It's kind of like when you come into my house, there's a certain way I'm going to behave because I have values. And so there's going to be ways that I communicate. But if a visitor comes in, I have to kind of set the standard of how we're going to behave in my house, and how we're going to communicate and what my values are. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I think that's different than the completed plan. I think there is a stopgap between us creating the plan because I think the train is just moving.
So are you requesting a facilitator for this discussion?
We can have a facilitator. We can think about together about how do we strategize now, about how we want to communicate and on our own communication around some of the things that are important to our community and our community voices. And so that we have our stuff together about how we want to talk about, and it's not new for me to be talking about how we talk about our community in a ways that's supportive. But I think it's important now more than ever.
Okay, does anybody have any
I-
thoughts or comments about
Yeah.
what Shanisa said?
Can I just see if I'm understanding two things, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong. So I think you were disappointed, like during the superintendent search, there was low turnout from certain communities. So I think the first thing she's thinking about as we do the strategic plan, like authentic feedback from communities that we don't always hear from. I think our sites do a great job, right? They work really hard, but sometimes at the district level, sometimes we miss certain voices, right? And then the other thing that you're talking about is this idea of repairing harm from the past. And so kind of like what we did when we went to meet with the Ravenswood alumni, which was a really rich, wonderful conversation, maybe bringing some of those voices. And we talked about this, maybe doing something. And that's how a great way of doing an authentic conversation is sometimes around a meal table, right? Where it's a lunch. It's not like presentation, talking heads. Like it was such a great conversation we had with that group that day, you know, over breakfast, where you're just really going deep and sharing something like that. Is that what you're kind of, so it's two different things.
That's a little bit different. You know, I don't want to put everything out there, but I just, I'm thinking about how Amy has talked about being proactive with our communication so that we own it. I know when I went to the CSBA conference last year, some districts were really challenged, like we were, bringing such diverse perspectives and languages and perspectives and opinions together. And some voices sounded louder than others, some voices were lower. And so they used a process to really, especially since, you know, there's going to be topics that come up that are going to be very important to our community that are valid. But I think we need some strategy on how to communicate and how to be not just the required, we had this meeting, but really like, how do we want to talk and be and send the message out and be a little bit more proactive about who we are doing this process. So it's a little bit different because I think your goals are going to be really, really wonderful. I'm excited about it, but I'm also wondering about communication.
So,
If I'm interpreting it correctly, it's kind of like the communication plan activity. You might get to a final plan by the end of the school year, but there's other things happening during the school year. So what is that interim strategy to address the immediate need without, you know, the finalized plan, because things are going to pop up.
For me, the specific items that you laid out, like what Carrie said, that we had low turnout, I believe it was non-English speakers in the survey about what we're looking for in a superintendent, was the particular one where we had very low turnout from non-English speakers. I would see something like that possibly being something that Crystal addresses with the board in an update in September, October, as around developing the communication plan, but not a separate agenda item about it. I don't know, do you see it as a separate agenda item or something that you would, how? I guess I don't see it as a separate agenda item, because I don't really see how that item would, like, what the discussion would look like, other than what we've already sort of said here. Like, we would like to hear from non-English speakers, for example, and what our strategies for
I think
outreach, but I
so.
don't see how that be, like, then what did, I think everyone would be interested to hear from all aspects of our district residents.
I'm looking at Crystal. She's thinking, so I'm gonna wait for her response.
I understand like the end goal. I just don't know what that would look like as a conversation on an agenda item. That's where I'm also, that's why I was asking about the facilitator. Honestly, it does sound like a retreat topic to me, but I'm just saying, because it's more of a, it's a conversation about how we're moving forward as a governance team with and around communication, which we know is very important.
That is not what I said.
So our recommendation would be that trustee Stevens and I have on offline communication so that we can explore.
So
it.
noted that I asked for it to be a future topic because it's hard because of the Brown Act, it's hard to talk to people and it needs to be somewhere. And I don't want to wait till November to have it. Yeah. Just put it out there.
Okay, well, I'll say for me, I don't have a vision for how that would look as an agenda item for us to, beyond what we've already kind of discussed here in terms of the intent of it.
Do you want to
But
throw out a
I'm
piece?
open to the two of you having discussion, and if you have a meeting of the minds and both think it
Because I
is
like
the
to
right
have a
solution.
communication plan that we can discuss around communication for all communities. That's more strategic and not just the required communication, but I understand if I'm not with what. So.
Would it work to have like you're talking about like an agenda item, maybe of a presentation on how we're going to reach out to all communities? Is
That could work, or what language?
because that's a piece of it,
Yeah, it's a piece.
right? Because you
of
can't
it.
take the whole thing.
No,
right?
we can't take the whole thing.
Because I know that we do have district office staff that is doing quite a bit, and we might not even be aware of some of the things they're doing. Correct?
I think what I'm hearing is a lot of the missing pieces that we're striving to discover in next year, right? Because we're talking about centering around our values and finding our North Star and establishing our baseline for communication and how we do business within all of our communities. I think that we know that that is a long, inclusive process. And we know that before that process is finished, we are going to be faced with conversations that would probably be far easier to have if we had all of those things, right? So I think like I understand that. It could be a discussion item where like basically kind of like what we're doing now, where we're
And I didn't mean for.
yeah where we're kind of talking about the level of importance that maybe each trustee would have as far as how we communicate.
So mine is an interim communication plan and really looking at strategic communications around some of the things that are going to be coming up that could either be supportive of all communities or split our community. And so I just want us to be more proactive. And there's so many parts to it, but that is the piece, that's the slice that as a community leader across the whole district, that I just want to make sure we're holding all of our communities. And this goes on my observation of being a parent coming into the community. That has not always been done. And someone walks away very like, this is not the district for them. They come, but they don't feel love, right? And so how do I want to have that communication, and maybe we bring in our current contractors, whomever they are, to say, how do we do this? How do we begin to set the tone to have a really healthy partner loving communication around some tough subjects that are going to be coming up.
And two groups that come to mind for me are the people who didn't respond to the superintendent survey and then all the families that opted to go to private school. because they didn't feel the love and chose to go somewhere else. Those are two separate groups that I see as,
I wouldn't say the ones who, I'm talking about the people who go into our school is what I'm.
oh, when you say community, you only
I
meant
really,
people
I
attending.
really think it's the ones who are here. We take care of our family first. They chose us. We love them. We say we are
I thought you
here.
said didn't like it.
No, no.
That's what I thought I
who
heard
are
you say.
not here, and don't necessarily be seen and heard, whether, regardless of what geographic area you live in. So it's putting a plan together to have whatever conversations we're going to have in the fall, whether it's the master plan or whether it's some topic, or how do we want our environment to be? And I kind of, let me close it out like this. I just remember our first meeting, and President Jen, you said, well, okay, we're going to do our first retreat differently. And you said, how should we set this up? And we all, you know, I think it was Amy, and I can't remember. I know Amy was part of the conversation, and we were like a little subgroup, and we changed the atmosphere of our board meeting by setting up our ground rules. Our how we want to feel, what do we want to take away? And it changed the dynamics, not perfectly, right? But it began to put us on the right road of how do we have difficult conversations, challenging conversations. And that's what we have. We have a challenging conversation. I want to own that. It's beautiful to have diversity and love and appreciation from all different walks of life. And we also know that that is a great challenge because we don't all know what the other person's experience is. So my job as a leader is to set the container. And I think having an interim communication plan will allow us to have a roadmap that we can all have talking points from, setting up our environments as responsible leaders in our district areas, or whomever your community is, or whomever you talk to, because I know mine is not limited to my district area, saying we're going to have this conversation, and this is what our expectations are about how we're going to set the environment, set the table to have really good, healthy conversation on our terms. So I said it. No more explanation.
Okay, I mean, I guess I'll say for me, I would, it's already something we talked about as a board and superintendent goal, and I would let Crystal bring that how and when she thinks makes the most sense and not force one sooner. Where do you guys stand on this?
Hard to do it right now. I mean, it sounds like two of you might have more conversations, and does that sound more comfortable? And then rather than us, I mean, I don't mind, like what I said before, I don't mind.
Yeah.
I don't mind having a little piece of it as.
I'm saying not, Shawnee's wants this as a future, and I'm saying no to sum this up, and you guys haven't, I don't know whether you said yes or no.
This is
Answer. Terrible?
well, I feel like this is
trying to say-
actually potentially the first step in that long-range communications plan, right? To create an interim plan could be the first step, and that's the very first thing that Superintendent Leach tackles, and then she provides an update on that. And it could be an agenda item, right? If we just label it as interim plan is the first step, and then we say, okay, we're in agreement with the direction that that's going, and then we move on to the rest of the communication plan.
So do I get 3 votes?
Well, I think what I'm saying is that it should be decided by Superintendent Leach in terms of timing. But I think that we should have some sort of update in terms of that initial step, right? In terms of an interim plan. So I agree that there should be an update of some kind, but I don't know if it needs to be an agenda item or it's just a weekly update, right? But if we want more discussion, then it would have to be an agenda item.
So I think what you said is what I said, which was that it would be it's part of superintendent's goals and board goals, and would be updated on the cadence of those items.
Yeah, well, I think maybe if we start with just a weekly update on what it is, if we have enough questions generated from that weekly update, it could become an agenda item, right? I don't know.
I'm not sure that's something that would be of the weekly update sort of topic personally, but well, Carrie, I haven't heard where you are on this.
I said, it's kind of complicated because I want to please everybody right now. I think I'd rather have Crystal talk to Shanice and bring and recommendation back. Have
Laura's
Crystal talk to
reminding
Shanice
us
a
of the
little more and then
parking
bring a
lot.
recommendation back.
Or the shed.
We'll
It's a
explain that
complicated, it's a complicated, big topic.
after.
All right. Since we can't figure it out, I just want the agenda item. We just need to say yes or no. We all vote. It's just on the record. And then Crystal, do we want to do, I'm not the president. Do we want it on the agenda or not? That really is the question. I explained it. Do we want it on the agenda? Yes or
Well,
no?
the question is, the question you're asking is, we want to do it on a different cadence than we already have for superintendent goals and board goals, which already has a set out cadence in our board bylaws. Like, we already have goals and cadence laid out, and you're asking to change it and to accelerate it, as I understand it. So the question is, do we want to accelerate it? And I said no. It sounded to me like Carrie said she wanted, Amy said she wanted to stick to the plan that we already have laid out for the superintendent goals. And I wasn't sure. Okay, so the three of us want to stick to the plan that we already had, which is,
But that's why I was saying, in terms of the plan, when she proposes the timeline for everything, that first timeline could include an interim plan, right? To share an interim plan for just this year while we're creating. So that's why I'm saying it could become an agenda item. Because she's going to update us on
it
what.
could,
her
but we're
plan-
not requiring it
Yeah,
at
no,
this
we're not
meeting.
requiring it.
Because
Right.
it's just supposed to be agenda item to discuss. We
Yeah.
weren't supposed to discuss the agenda item.
Okay, so my conclusion is we did not create a new agenda item at the moment. Is there any other future agenda items? Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Suffolk. Goodbye.